Chapter 1133. Just as the three's hearts were in their throats for Wang Yu, the next scene caused their eyes to pop out of their sockets. The netherworld ghostfire was extremely fast, arriving behind Wang Yu in the blink of an eye. Wang Yu slightly twisted his butt, leaning to the side and lowering his head. Just like that, the netherworld ghostfire from Busrook brushed past Wang Yu and Wang Yu. As if he had eyes on the back of his head, Wang Yu selfishly didn't even turn around to look. He didn't even slow down his speed as he rushed forward. The trio from Heaven's Secret were completely stunned. The vast majority of the skills in Rebirth were non-directional, and compared to arrows, their trajectories were relatively slow. Even if ranged classes had support systems, as long as an expert player paid attention to the trajectory of the projectiles, it wasn't impossible to dodge a magic class skill. But for someone like Wang Yu, dodging several of Busrook's netherworld ghostfire in one go, even an expert like Unpredictable, with his eyes at the top of his head, would not be able to do such a thing. After all, the netherworld ghostfire skill was released by Busrook, and its trajectory was incomparable to that of a normal player's skill. An ordinary person wouldn't even have the time to react when their eyes were wide open, let alone Wang Yu, who didn't even bother to look. This kind of operation was simply shocking. If it hadn't happened right in front of their eyes, they definitely wouldn't have believed such nonsense. Not only the trio from Heaven's Secret, but even Busrook, who was behind Wang Yu, saw Wang Yu dodge his skill. The flames in his eye sockets flickered slightly, and he stood there, not continuing to attack Wang Yu. Although Busrook was an undead, and his face didn't have the slightest expression, everyone could clearly feel Busrook's astonishment. While everyone was still in a daze, Wang Yu had already rushed in front of Heaven's Secret's trio. Fortunately, although the undead summoned by Busrook looked frightening, their attack power was only so. Surrounded by a group of undead, the trio's health had only decreased by a fifth. Thunder Stomp suddenly landed. A circle of lightning spread out from Wang Yu's feet. The frightening undead were knocked back by the knockback effect, and a damage figure of 30,000 appeared above their heads. At that time, Seer of Heaven's Secrets and the others, who had been successfully saved by Wang Yu, were no longer frozen in place. They came back to their senses and looked at Wang Yu in astonishment, asking, You activated the evasion script? It could not be helped. Even if everyone knew that Rebirth had a perfect anti-cheating system and that it was impossible to have cheats, they could not help but ask when they saw that step. Script? What's that? Wang Yu's head was filled with confusion as she asked. At hearing Wang Yu's words, inside of Heaven's Secrets and the others were speechless on the spot. Meow, judging from Wang Yu's blank tone, it didn't seem like he was lying. It seemed like this guy really relied on his skills. It was too scary. Thinking of this, all-seeing Heaven's Secrets couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Damn, it was a good thing that I didn't silently seek death. Otherwise, I don't know how miserable my fate would have been. While all-seeing Heaven's Secrets was still in a state of shock, he heard Wang Yu shout, What are you guys waiting for? If you don't want to die, then hurry up and run. Just as Wang Yu finished speaking, he saw Busrook raise his staff, and the darkness barrier once again rose from the ground. As the saying goes, learn from the mistakes of the past and the lessons of the future. Having just been frozen by Busrook once, everyone was already prepared. Seeing Busrook wave his staff, everyone immediately scattered in all directions, dodging Busrook's second dark enchantment. Not waiting for everyone to catch their breath, Busrook raised his staff and hit the ground. Whoosh! A circle of green light spread out from Busrook's body. Wang Yu was very familiar with this skill. Toxic Nova, a full-screen skill with no blind spots. However, as players of the Dark faction, Seer of Heaven's Secrets and the others had never fought against the Scarlet Church's Anariel before, so they were puzzled when they saw this skill. What are you looking at? Get down. Wang Yu held his forehead in despair and swung his rod at the back of Hitaki's knee, who was not far away from him. Hataki 55 screamed in pain and fell to the ground, dodging the toxic nova. Unfathomable Secrets was an expert, and his reaction speed was extremely fast. Hearing Wang Yu's words, he immediately fell to the ground, dodging the attack. However, Seer of Heaven's Secrets was originally the closest to the boss, and he was wondering what kind of skill it was. Before he could react, the toxic nova had already spread out in front of him. Hiss! After a strange sound, Seer of Heaven's Secrets turned green from head to toe. 500-500 Following that, a string of damage numbers appeared above his head. As expected of a shameless boss, a level 50 assassin's HP was only around 20,000. How could God's secret withstand the damage of 500 HP per second? Even the gods couldn't save him. At first, Seer of Heaven's Secrets wanted to use a potion, but seeing that his HP was dropping for a full 1,200 seconds, he simply gave up and was poisoned to death. Seer of Heaven's Secrets was optimistic, thinking that after he died and resurrected, his status would be clear. But the moment Seer of Heaven's Secrets' HP bar emptied, Buzzrock pointed his staff at the air. Seer of Heaven's Secrets' body suddenly exploded, and like a cicada shedding its carapace, a skeleton crawled out of Seer of Heaven's Secrets' body. The skeleton was slender and held a dagger in its hand. It was Seer of Heaven's Secrets. Everyone hurriedly cast Examine on it. Undead Seer of Heaven's Secrets, LV 50, HP 20,000 MP, 5,000 skills. Undead. As the Lord Necromancer, Buzzrock can use powerful dark magic to turn the enemy's corpse into his own puppet. The puppet will inherit 80% of the dead's attribute. Lasts for 1,200 seconds. That's disgusting. Seeing that Seer of Heaven's Secrets had been turned into his underling, Wang Yu and the others couldn't help but feel a chill run down their spines. He wasn't even allowed to rest in peace after he died. That was too horrifying. If that was the case, he might as well commit suicide. Of course, Seer of Heaven's Secrets had already lost control of his body, so committing suicide was a luxury. Under Buzzrock's command, Seer of Heaven's Secrets raised his dagger and pounced on Hataki 50%. He was an elite boss, after all, so picking on the weak was an instinctive reaction. Hataki 50%'s mechanical skills weren't very good, but he was a professional when it came to running away. Seeing Seer of Heaven's Secrets pounce on him, Hataki 50% immediately retreated, and Seer of Heaven chased after him. Hataki 50% was an archer, so he had an obvious advantage in agility. Right now, Seer of Heaven's Secrets only had 80% of Seer's speed, so he couldn't do anything to Hataki 50% in a short time. However, seeing Seer of Heaven's Secrets in such a state, Seer of Heaven's Secrets' expression became extremely ugly. Nyogo, what do we do now? Seer of Heaven asked Wang Yu. Chapter 1134. 1. No one wanted to be dragged into a fight by a boss even after death. However, they had all witnessed Buzzrock's strength. After fighting him for 2 rounds, everyone knew just how disgusting this boss was. In previous dungeons, although magic-based bosses had long arms and AoE skills, as magic-based bosses, their skills needed some time to cool down and cast. As long as players could figure out the boss's casting frequency and conditions, defeating a magic-based boss was relatively easy. However, Buzzrock was completely different from other magic-based bosses. This old bastard didn't even have the time to cast his crowd control skills, let alone his other skills. Especially after witnessing the Poison Nova's effect, as well as the fact that it could turn players into its minions, a shadow had been cast over everyone's hearts. It was no wonder why not a single guild player had been able to clear this dungeon in the past. Just Buzzrock's Poison Nova alone was a nightmare for players. After all, players with agility like Wang Yu and the others were few and far between. Moreover, agility classes like archers were also the minority in a guild. Once Poison Nova descended, at least half of the players would fall victim to it. When the time came, everyone would turn on each other. As a result, the more players there were, the more difficult this boss would be. From this, it could be seen that Buzzrook was a boss with no blind spots. His only weakness was his low health. However, it was unrealistic for players to overwhelm him with numbers. Ugh! Wang Yu rubbed his chin as he stared at Buzzrook, who was standing not too far away. Of course, the reason why Wang Yu was having a headache wasn't because of Buzzrook's disgusting skills. After all, in Wang Yu's eyes, no matter how fast Buzzrook's casting speed was, he was still full of openings. The reason why Wang Yu was having a headache was because, in order to save the three of them, Wang Yu had stabbed Buzzrook with his staff. However, the system had reminded Wang Yu that Buzzrook was already an undead, and normal attacks were ineffective against him. The system had always been shameless. The words, normal attack, were ambiguous. Only the heavens knew what kind of attack was not normal. Could it be that it required a light skill? At this point, Wang Yu turned to Unpredictable and asked, "Do you have any holy light skills?" The Unpredictable Heavenly Secret frowned. "Big brother, how can we learn such a treasonous skill from the Dark Faction? TSK, that's not good. I might not be able to do it without a saint-type attack." Wang Yu shook his head awkwardly. "Why?" Tianji asked in a daze. Wang Yu was surprised. "You were the one who started the fight. Didn't you see the system notification?" System notification? Heavenly Secrets Unpredictable stared blankly. "I don't think so." Wang Yu was even more perplexed when he heard Heavenly Secrets Unpredictable say that. Heavenly Secrets Unpredictable was just an archer from the Dark Faction. His attacks must have been ordinary, so why was his attacks effective? Could it be? As he pondered, Wang Yu once again probed Buzzrook's attribute. When he saw that Buzzrook was killed by a demon hunter through the heart, Wang Yu finally understood. No wonder my attacks were ineffective. Buzzrook was only afraid of archers. Understanding this, Wang Yu nodded. He shouted to Hataki 55, who was running around with Heavenly Secrets Insight, "Little Five, come over here." Oh. Hataki's woo-woo kai seemed to be used to working without complaint. When he heard Wang Yu's order, he didn't ask why and ran over to where Wang Yu and Heavenly Secrets Unfathomable were. Wang Yu crushed Heavenly Secrets Insight, then ordered the two of them, "Now that the boss's aggro is gone, you two stay here. I'll hold it off. Don't worry about anything else, just follow behind me and attack the boss as hard as you can." This is the strategy you came up with? Hearing Wang Yu's simple and crude command, Unpredictable Heavenly Secrets couldn't help but sway his mind a little. He thought that Wang Yu would have some kind of brilliant idea, but he didn't expect Wang Yu to just say one sentence. Just stand there and attack as hard as you can. There wasn't even any basic requirements like coordination or positioning. We're fighting Buzzrook again, not a stray dog in a beginner's village. If we just stand there and attack as hard as we can, what's the difficulty of this dungeon? Can't everyone just choose a DPS class? Okay. Wang Yu said firmly. "Do you have any objections?" No. Unpredictable Heavenly Secrets waved his hand. It couldn't be helped. In the game, whoever had the biggest fist had the right to speak. Otherwise, why would he be an expert? Following the footsteps of an expert was always the right thing to do. Unpredictable Heavenly Secrets had personally experienced Wang Yu's strength. In any case, no one could do anything about this annoying boss. Whatever Wang Yu said was the law. What else could they do? Since there are no objections, then let's do it. Saying so, Wang Yu clenched his fists and charged at Buzzrook, who was moving toward them. Seeing Wang Yu charging at him, Buzzrook expressionlessly raised his staff and was about to cast a spell. At this moment, Wang Yu swung her right hand, switching her weapon to a long staff and smashing it into Buzzrook's hand. Pah! Buzzrook's wrist trembled slightly, and the skill was forcibly interrupted by Wang Yu. Unpredictable Heavenly Secrets and Hataki 50/50 were once again dumbfounded. Even though they had seen Wang Yu's skills before, When they thought about Wang Yu's direct confrontation with the boss, they were still caught off guard. There was no need to say anything else. This was what a real man should be. While the two were still sighing, Wang Yu shouted, "What are you standing there for? Attack!" Oh! The two of them suddenly remembered that they had a mission, so they knocked their arrows and aimed at Buzzrook. In the blink of an eye, the arrow pierced into Buzzrook's body. 5400-3200 Two blobs of damage floated above Buzzrook's head. "Aya, your attack power is so high?" Unpredictable Heavenly Secrets looked at Hataki 50/50 in surprise when he saw the damage on Buzzrook's head. Hataki 50/50 took out a set of arrows and handed it to him, saying, "For you." Receiving the arrows, Unpredictable Heavenly Secrets exclaimed, "Silver! Silver light arrows? You're so rich." Silver light arrows were a type of magic arrow with the effect of holy light penetration. They had the ability to counter the dark attribute, and were one of the best arrows for archers in the dark faction. However, these arrows were a specialty of Holy Light City. They were sold for 1 silver coin per set in the light faction, but 1 gold coin per set in the dark faction. It was a cross-faction smuggling item, so it was normal for the price to rise. Who would have thought that a janitor like Hataki 50/50 would have such an item? Hataki 50/50 had a helpless expression on his face as he said, "Apart from delivering equipment, janitors also have to carry supplies for other players. These arrows belong to our boss, and we can't leave anyway. Use them however you like." TSK. That short fatty is actually so rich? Unpredictable Heavenly Secrets curled his lips in envy. Comparisons were odious. This saying made sense. Chapter 1135. As an undead, Buzzrook was naturally countered by Saint-type weapons. After equipping the silver light arrow, Unpredictable's attack power suddenly increased by a large margin. All of Buzzrook's skills were based on his skills, and Buzzrook's casting required him to wave his staff. In front of Wang Yu, there was such a large gap. If Buzzrook could still successfully cast a spell, then he might as well cripple his own martial art. With Wang Yu constantly interfering with Buzzrook's spellcasting, Buzzrook struggled for a long time, but was unable to cast a single skill. This was the most frustrating boss in history. What was even more frustrating was that Buzzrook tried to bypass Wang Yu to attack Unpredictable and Hataki, but he was dragged back by Wang Yu every single time. At this moment, Buzzrook seemed to be glued to the ground by Wang Yu. Even taking 2 steps forward was an extravagant hope. Unpredictable and Hataki were much more comfortable. The greatest blessing for a DPS class was to be able to deal as much damage as Wuji. Today, Wang Yu had fulfilled one of their dreams. The two did not even need to move. They just stood in place and aimed at Buzzrook. 8754-11411. A string of damage values floated above Buzzrook's head. Archers were an agility-based class, so their attack rate was naturally the highest among all the classes. Even though only 2 archers were dealing damage, with their silver light bolts equipped, each wave of attacks dealt nearly 20,000 damage to Buzzrook. Buzzrook's meager 2 million HP was considered one of the most fragile bosses. Under Unpredictable and Hataki's relentless attacks, Buzzrook's HP fell to 30% in just a few minutes. Once a boss's HP fell to 30%, there was a high chance that it would trigger a second state. Buzzrook was no exception. Ignorant worm. When Buzzrook's health dropped to 30%, Buzzrook sneered. Suddenly, a black light flashed on his withered hands, which were trembling from being whipped by Wang Yu. At the same time, a massive black barrier burst forth from Buzzrook's body, pushing Wang Yu to the side. Immediately afterwards, Buzzrook raised his staff above his head and chanted a series of incomprehensible notes. In any case, that was the meaning. As for what the musical notes were, Uncle Nyo's cultivation was still shallow, so he could not imitate them. Following Buzzrook's incantation, black energy notes descended from the sky in a dense and rhythmic manner, covering the entire space within Buzzrook's firing range. The black energy notes smashed into the ground one after another, and the violent impact created deep pits in the ground. The visual effect was like a violent thunder descending from the sky, extremely arrogant. At this moment, Buzzrook hated the people who had hurt him, especially Wang Yu. Buzzrook wanted nothing more than to kill him. However, Wang Yu was no longer a noob. He knew that a boss would use such a move. So when Buzzrook's health dropped to 30%, Wang Yu made preparations to escape. As soon as Buzzrook's barrier opened, Wang Yu took advantage of the opportunity to jump out of Buzzrook's attack range. As for Unpredictable and Hataki, there was no need to even mention them. Not only were they the fastest classes, but they were also quite a distance away from Buzzrook. Both of them were experts at escaping. Before Wang Yu could react, the two of them had already turned tail and disappeared without a trace. Poor Buzzrook. After unleashing his ultimate skill, not a single player had died. For a boss like Buzzrook, it could be said that he had thrown the boss to the extreme. Perhaps it was because the undead did not breathe, but Buzzrook's lung capacity was quite large. In one breath, he had been chanting for a full minute. Countless energy notes bombarded the ground, causing debris to fly in all directions and the earth to shatter. Wang Yu and the others were hiding in the distance, but they could feel the entire scene shaking. Finally, Buzzrook finished unleashing his ultimate skill, and the surrounding area was razed to the ground. Looking at the mess on the ground, the three of them could not help but break out in cold sweat. With this formation, if a guild had formed a formation and surrounded this area, not a single one of them would have been able to escape. Fortunately, the three of them were very mobile, or else they would have been killed on the spot. It was no wonder that this dungeon did not have a limit on the number of players who could enter. It was obvious that this was a trap. The more players there were, the less mobile they would be, and the harder the dungeon would be to clear. After unleashing his ultimate skill, Buzzrook's movements became sluggish. Just as he was about to raise his staff to attack Wang Yu and the others again, Wang Yu's skill came off cooldown. Qinggong, blink, staff swing. Pa! History repeated itself. Buzzrook's hand trembled from the slap, and his skill was interrupted. Unpredictable and Hataki's equal chances arrows followed right after. It was still the same routine and fighting style as before. Buzzrook, who only had 30% of his health left, was unable to do anything. His health bar was emptied, and he was knocked down by Wang Yu and the others. Phew! Buzzrook finally fell. Unpredictable and Hataki let out a long sigh of relief. Expressions of joy and disbelief appeared on their faces. Past, actually past. Hataki's eyes were filled with tears. He was so excited that he looked like he was about to cry. Hataki's excitement was understandable. After all, he was just a professional player who swept the floor. He had been at the bottom of the game for a long time, and all he had to do every day was to deliver supplies, pull monsters, and watch others fight monsters, let alone bosses. Hatsuki 50/50 hadn't even fought the most basic monsters before. Hatsuki 50/50 had an inexplicable yearning for battle. At this moment, Hataki's running profession had finally defeated a boss. Moreover, it was the first boss in the legendary challenge mode. One could only imagine how excited he was. That feeling was no less than a sparring partner who had won the world championship in his first match. As an expert, he had naturally fought quite a few bosses. However, this was the first time he had fought as easily as he did today. He was quite excited and clenched his fists tightly. His excitement was indescribable. Hurry up and kill the boss. Let's see what drops. Unpredictable shouted excitedly at Wang Yu, who was standing beside Buzzrook. Usually, the player who killed the boss was the most important player in the team. Since Buzzrook was the first to kill the boss, it was only natural that he would drop a lot of good items. The fact that Unpredictable had given the chance to kill the boss to Wang Yu, who did not deal any damage at all, showed that Unpredictable was a kind person who acknowledged Wang Yu's contributions to the team. Of course, he did not dare to deny it, unless he wanted to die with the boss. Chapter 1136. How could this be? How could this be? Wang Yu's eyes narrowed as he abruptly did a backflip to put some distance between himself and Busruk's corpse. Just as Wang Yu rolled to the side, the already dead Busruk suddenly stood up. The health bar on his head had also recovered to its original state. The boss had actually resurrected with full health. Upon seeing this, Hatake Wu Wu Kai and Tianji Nanji were stunned. Unpredictable Fate had fought his fair share of bosses, after all, and it wasn't as if he had never seen a boss that could resurrect. After a brief moment of shock, he quickly recovered from his shock. But Hatake Wu Wu Kai had never encountered such a situation before. Seeing Busruk, whom he had just killed with great difficulty, come back to life, Hatake Wu Wu Kai gasped in horror. What's going on? Is this boss unkillable? I'm not sure. Unpredictable Fate shook his head. Perhaps it's a special skill of the undead. It doesn't matter. If we can't kill it in one shot, we'll just have to try a few more times. I'm not confident that it won't die forever. Saying so, Unpredictable Fate raised his crossbow and prepared to fire again. While the two were still in a daze, Busruk and Wang Yu had already begun fighting. After resurrecting, Busruk's strength did not improve. He was still suppressed by Wang Yu, unable to use any of his skills. He could only parry Wang Yu's attacks. Under the attacks of Unpredictable Fate and Wang Yu, his health bar dropped at a rate visible to the naked eye. 5 minutes later, Busruk's health bar was emptied once more. However, the result was the same as before. In less than 10 seconds, he stood up again. This time, Unpredictable Fate was a little puzzled. Technically speaking, Unpredictable Fate was also an expert. After playing the game for so long, he had fought quite a few bosses that could resurrect. However, resurrection was a special skill. Although it did not have much attack power, it was not an exaggeration to call it one of the strongest skills in the game. It was comparable to the ultimate skills of any class. Of course, this kind of skill had a relatively long cooldown. Currently, all known resurrection skills had a cooldown of an hour. Therefore, even if it was a boss that could resurrect, it could only resurrect once in 5 minutes. No matter how shameless the game designers were, they wouldn't design a boss that didn't even have a cooldown. This Busruk had resurrected twice in such a short period of time. It was simply too strange. Did he have to kill the undead monarch first? With that thought in mind, Unfathomable looked at the Lord of the Dead, Husmer. Just as Unpredictable Fate was hesitating on whether or not to lure Husmer over, Wang Yu discussed with the other two in the channel. This thing is a little shameless. Should we try the undead monarch first? Alright. Unfathomable nodded, walked up to Husmer, raised his crossbow, and fired an arrow at him. Thud! With a muffled sound, the arrow landed on Husmer's head and bounced off. At the same time, Unpredictable Heavenly Fate received a system notification. Attack ineffective. Seeing the system notification, Unpredictable Tianji was speechless. Fortunately, although Husmer didn't deal any damage, Unpredictable Heavenly Fate's attack had successfully attracted Husmer's aggro. Husmer lowered his head and used charge, pulling him into the battlefield. After Husmer was pulled over, Busruk suddenly scolded angrily, "Lowly invaders, how dare you disturb our king? I will enslave you for eternity." As he spoke, Busruk raised his staff. Seeing this, Wang Yu casually knocked Busruk's staff off course. But at that moment, Busruk suddenly stretched out his withered left hand. In the blink of an eye, Wang Yu swung his staff at Busruk's left hand. Pada! Busruk's left hand fell to the ground. Strangely, Busruk's left hand sank into the ground as soon as it fell. Then, a circle of black light spread out from under Busruk's feet. Wherever the black light passed, the ground would tremble. Then, one after another, undead emerged from the ground and charged at Buzzrock and 50-50 chance. Who would have thought that fighting two bosses at the same time would have such a special effect? Wang Yu had encountered undead legions before. He knew that these monsters' attributes weren't that great, but their sheer numbers were enough to make a new player despair. Run! Seeing that the undead legion had been summoned, Wang Yu gave a command to unpredictable heavenly fate and leaped forward to stop Buzzrock. But at that moment, Huzmer had already arrived in front of Wang Yu and swung his scythe, blocking off Wang Yu's path of retreat. Although Huzmer was an undead and wielded a scythe, his attack speed wasn't slow at all. With a raise of his hand, the scythe was already upon him. Aya! Clearly, Wang Yu hadn't expected Huzmer to be so fast. Slightly surprised, he lowered his head, allowing Huzmer's scythe to slash past Wang Yu's back. At the same time, the undead around Wang Yu were harvested like wheat by Huzmer's scythe. F***ck. Wang Yu's scalp went numb. This bastard's setting is really strange. When it goes berserk, it can even attack its own people. Seeing that Wang Yu had dodged its attack, Huzmer turned its scythe around and swung it again. Without the undead blocking his way, Wang Yu once again regained his mobility as a grandmaster of combat. Facing the scythe, Wang Yu remained calm. He tilted his body, forming a strange angle with the ground, and once again dodged Huzmer's attack. At the same time, Wang Yu stabbed his staff into the ground and used the momentum to turn his body sideways. He arrived in front of Huzmer and switched his weapon to a longsword. He swung the blade upwards and hit Huzmer's crotch. 21145. A huge damage number floated above Huzmer's head. Huzmer's body swayed, and the flames in his eyes danced wildly. As the ruler of a country, no one had ever dared to treat him like this except for his concubine. Now that he was being stabbed in the crotch by a man, he couldn't stand it. Despicable intruder! I want you to suffer in purgatory! Huzmer roared. He grabbed the scythe with both hands and swung it, activating whirlwind slash. Humph humph. Seeing this, Wang Yu laughed coldly and crouched on the ground. Huzmer was tall and strong, and his weapon was long. The area of effect of whirlwind slash was so large that it covered the entire space around it. Unfortunately, Wang Yu was crouched on the ground. No matter how Huzmer's scythe flashed, he didn't take any damage. At the end of the day, Wang Yu was a noob. Any normal player would not use this method to dodge whirlwind slash. Seeing that Wang Yu still had such a shameless trick up his sleeve, Huzmer immediately cancelled whirlwind slash and leaped into the air. He activated Collapsing Mountain and swung his scythe at Wang Yu's head. Hee. Chapter 1137. Boom. Huzmer landed on the ground with a loud crash. Its giant scythe smashed into the spot where Wang Yu had just been, causing the ground to tremble slightly. Bang. At the same time, Wang Yu's thunder stomp landed squarely between Huzmer's thighs. Wang Yu had predicted Huzmer's movements. It was as if Huzmer had landed on him himself. Before Huzmer could regain its balance after jumping down from the sky, it was kicked back by Wang Yu's thunder stomp as a bolt of lightning spread out. It wasn't that Wang Yu was a despicable person who specialized in attacking the bottom three. It was just that Huzmer's body was too big and his but had fallen from the sky. This made Wang Yu's heart itch. If he didn't give Huzmer a kick, he would feel sorry for him. Just like Bushrook, Huzmer was immune to normal attacks other than swords and blade. Therefore, although Wang Yu's kick seemed exaggerated and sent the boss tumbling, it did not deal any damage at all. Of course, even if there was damage, it was psychological damage. Huzmer was an emperor with unparalleled dignity and glory. Now, it had been kicked to the ground by a mere human. One could only imagine how angry it was. Lowly worm. All of you must die. Huzmer roared angrily as it climbed back to its feet. It swung its giant scythe at Wang Yu from above. Wang Yu's eyes narrowed. He dodged the scythe and quickly arrived in front of Huzmer. He raised his sword and stabbed at Husmer's waist. 41124. Roar. Damned worm. Husmer roared again, swinging its scythe at Nyeyen. Wang Yu flipped forward and rolled behind Husmer. She raised her long sword and stabbed Husmer's heart platform acupoint on the back of his head. 44121. A damage value rose up from Husmer's head. Not only did Husmer fail to land a hit on Wang Yu, but it was also being sent around in circles. It was so angry that it wanted to tear Wang Yu to pieces. Husmer might be strong, but that was only in the eyes of normal players. In Wang Yu's eyes, it was only a level 70 elite boss. It was nothing compared to Lord Yu Huiqing Esther, and Sky Dragon's City Lord. Moreover, Husmer was a clumsy warrior class. It was perfectly countered by Wang Yu's skill. Circle jump. 24454. Sea of Qi. 31456. Tan Zhong. 51142. No matter how Husmer attacked, Wang Yu did not panic. She moved around and dodged all of Husmer's attacks as if she was taking a stroll in the park. While she was dodging, she stabbed Husmer's vital acupoints again and again, taking away a considerable amount of HP with each stab. Despicable coward! Don't dodge if you're a man. Husmer refused to admit defeat. Even after being beaten to such a state, he still tried to act cool. Only children would resort to such trickery. It didn't suit Wang Yu's identity as a martial arts master. It was just a bunch of numbers. Trying to goad him into action was ridiculous. As expected of Unpredictable and Hataki, the two of them were the best at running. While Wang Yu was torturing Husmer, the two of them had led Buzzrook and the rest of the undead to run in circles around the area. Buzzrook wasn't an agility class. Even though he was faster than Husmer, he was no match for the two archers. As for the undead, there was no need to even mention them. These fellows moved extremely slowly, and after following the two for a few steps, they would have to change directions. Some to the left, some to the right, some to the front, and some to the back. Fortunately, Wang Yu had Husmer by his side. Otherwise, the undead wouldn't be able to restrict his movements. Secret of Heaven, who had rushed to the battlefield after reviving, trembled as he stood in the distance, watching Wang Yu, who was beating up the boss by himself, and the other two players who were being chased by the boss in circles. Secret of Heaven was in a state of panic. How am I supposed to interfere? I'll just hide on the sidelines. Not knowing what to do, Hidden Insight could only hide in a corner and watch from the sidelines. He had no other choice. The most important thing in fighting a boss was rhythm. Now that the outcome of the battle had been decided, if he forcefully joined in, he would become an unstable factor. It was highly possible that he would disrupt the rhythm of the battle. Secret Insight was the guild leader of a major guild. Naturally, he understood this principle. After a few minutes, Husmer's HP dropped to 30% under Wang Yu's assault. As usual, the boss activated super armor as soon as its HP reached red. Then, Husmer swung his scythe and smashed his fist into the ground. A ring of black energy spread out from Husmer's fist. At this moment, the undead scattered around Wang Yu all stopped in unison. Their bodies began to retract. At the same time, a jumping red number appeared above their heads. 3, 2, 1, boom! As the countdown ended, there was a loud bang, and all the undead in the scene instantly exploded. These undead were scattered all over the battlefield. Moreover, they were extremely dense. The explosion radius of each undead was more than 500 meters. With so many undead exploding at the same time, there was no need to describe the scene. However, the damage was absolutely shocking. Poor Hidden Insight and half-open Hataki were blasted into white light on the spot. Hidden Insight, who was lucky enough to avoid the disaster outside the battlefield, felt his scalp go numb when he saw this scene. Damn, these two bosses, one summoned minions and the other exploded minions. Their teamwork was absolutely disgusting. As the saying goes, attack whatever the boss summons. For example, these two bastards summoned remote-controlled bombs. What the hell was there to fight? They would be blasted to death instantly. I told you not to try this dungeon. Everyone dies once. Now I'm satisfied. Hidden Insight curled his lips. Secrets of Heaven curled his lips and cursed inwardly. Just as he was about to return to the respawn point to reunite with the others, he suddenly noticed a shadow on Husmer's neck. Huh? What's that? Hidden Insight rubbed his eyes and took a closer look. He immediately cried out involuntarily, F***CK. That's Iron Ox riding on Husmer's neck. As Husmer was abnormally cruel to its minions, Wang Yu had very few undead on his side. Right before the explosion, Wang Yu's figure flashed and jumped onto Husmer's neck. That was how he survived. Husmer was an undead monarch. Being ridden on his neck, he had lost the last of his dignity. In its rage, Husmer shook its body, trying to shake off Wang Yu. However, Wang Yu was very steady. He clamped his legs together and firmly held onto Husmer's neck. Then, he pressed down on the crown on Husmer's head with his left hand and circled his sword around Husmer's neck with his right. Then, he tightened his grip and slashed Husmer's neck. -270000. An unprecedented amount of damage appeared above Wang Yu's head. Undead Monarch Husma's head had been beheaded by Wang Yu. Chapter 1138. Behead. Two large words floated above Husker's head. Fate's Secret's mouth was agape. He didn't know how to express his feelings at this moment. Behead was a special effect in Rebirth. As long as the damage dealt was high enough and the target's vitals were hit, the effect would appear. However, Behead usually only appeared in PvP, when a higher-level account crushed a lower-level account. At this moment, however, Wang Yu was able to behead Husker, who was far above his level. This was simply unheard of. Even though Fate already knew that Wang Yu was powerful, when he saw Wang Yu kill the boss with a single slash, he was still dumbfounded. In truth, what Fate didn't know was that in the background settings, Husker's neck was Husker's vitals. Hence, it was reasonable for Wang Yu to be able to achieve such a behead effect. Of course, the prerequisite was that his attacks had to be as steady and precise as Wang Yu's. He also had to deal as much damage as Wang Yu. However, after killing Husker, Wang Yu didn't loot it as Fate had expected. Instead, he lightly jumped back, putting some distance between himself and Husker's corpse. After all, Busruk had resurrected twice under Wang Yu's watch. Wang Yu had long since been on guard against him. It was better to be safe than sorry. Sure enough, 10 seconds later, Husker's headless corpse suddenly sat up. With a wave of his hand, Husker's head jumped back onto his neck. After shaking its head, Husker's health bar miraculously returned to full. Fuck. There's even such a thing? Seer of Heaven's Secrets was dumbfounded. Sigh, Wang Yu shook her head and charged forward. Just as she was about to kill Husma and see if he had the ability to resurrect infinitely, Busruk, who had lost his target of aggro, turned around and faced her. He waved his staff and started casting spells at Wang Yu. The reason why Wang Yu was able to beat up Husmer was because of his nimble footwork. As a witchcraft insect, Busruk's skills were either immobilizing or decelerating, and they were all instant Yoi skills. With such a disgusting opponent harassing him from behind, no matter how strong Wang Yu was, he wouldn't dare to face Husmer head-on. Screw your brother-in-law. The gloomy Wang Yu cursed under his breath. He spread his wings and flew into the sky. After losing the aggro target, Busruk and Husma ran around in circles before running back to the city gate. Wang Yu was puzzled by the two bosses' aggro system. Logically speaking, the aggro in a dungeon wouldn't stop until the other party was dead. These two brothers didn't even see their opponent's aggro drop to 0. From the looks of it, apart from the corpses, this dungeon's boss was exactly the same as a wild boss. Seeing that the two undead had left, Wang Yu descended from the sky. At that time, the resurrected unpredictable and insight of heaven's secrets also came over. What do you think? How is it? Is the boss dead? Unpredictable asked as soon as he arrived in front of Wang Yu. There. Over there. Wang Yu pointed at the two bosses that had already returned to the city gate. Unpredictable was also puzzled. These two's aggro is a bit strange, Wang Yu said. Yeah, right. What's even stranger is that they can resurrect even after they die. Husmer also resurrected? Yeah. Wang Yu nodded and told them about Husmer's resurrection. Hataki 55's face paled when he heard this. Then doesn't that mean these two bosses are unbeatable? The two bosses could resurrect at full health. This shameless stat was indeed unbeatable. Impossible. Wang Yu shook his head. A friend of mine once said that there's no such thing as an unbeatable boss in the game. We've probably overlooked something. Everyone, think about it. Is there anything we haven't noticed? There's something we haven't noticed. Hearing Wang Yu's words, everyone rubbed their chins and began to think hard. From the fact that Buzzrook could resurrect 5 minutes after he died, it was clear that this was not some kind of resurrection skill. From the fact that Husmer could still resurrect after he died, it was not a question of who to kill first. To fight a monster that could resurrect, there was nothing more to do than to look at the cooldown of the skills and the order of the kill. These two bosses had actually skipped these two conditions. It was really confusing. Just as everyone was racking their brains, Inside of Heaven, who had been silent all this time, suddenly spoke up. You guys are saying that Buzzrook resurrected twice in a row? Yeah. Everyone nodded. That's right. Inside of Heaven exclaimed. These two bosses are symbiotic. Symbiotic bosses? No wonder. The unfathomable heavenly secrets nodded in understanding. Symbiotic? What does that mean? Wang Yu heard this, a little confused. After all, he was a noob in the game. He was not omniscient when it came to gaming terms. Unpredictable hurriedly explained. It means that these two bosses can't die alone. They have to die together. That's right. Insight of Heaven added. Didn't you guys see these two bosses' innate skills? Live and die together. It means symbiotic. So that's what live and die together means. After listening to the two bosses' explanation, Wang Yu finally understood what was going on. Wang Yu had actually noticed this innate skill a long time ago. However, Wang Yu did not play the game much, so he did not know much about this unique boss' innate skill. Therefore, he did not think too much about it. He thought that it was to show that the two bosses were brothers. Hataki was not much stronger than Wang Yu. She was also a silly girl, so it was normal that she did not notice it. As for Unpredictable Fate, he had been focused on dealing damage at the start. Later on, he was chased by the boss all over the place, so he did not have time to notice it. Therefore, only Inside of Heaven, who was an outsider, noticed it and thought about it. However, now that they knew how the bosses were going to die, the second problem arose. How were they going to kill the bosses? From the previous battle, it was not difficult to figure out that the two bosses had to be killed within 10 seconds to be completely dead. Therefore, it was not realistic to pull them one by one to kill them. However, if they were to pull two bosses at the same time, it would be even more difficult. Moreover, these two bosses were both elite bosses with high AI. In a situation where they were not facing a single enemy, they would definitely not focus their aggro on a single person. In this case, it was impossible for Wang Yu to pull two bosses at the same time. Among the four of them, only Wang Yu had the ability to pull Husma's aggro. Moreover, without Wang Yu, the others were definitely not a match for Buzzrook. If the tables were turned, Wang Yu would not be able to deal any damage to Buzzrook. If he could not deal any damage, it would be impossible to kill both bosses at the same time. As a result, everyone fell into a dead end. Chapter 1139. It couldn't be helped. These two bosses were just too shameless. Apart from symbiosis, Long-range fighters were immune to damage from arrows and melee fighters were immune to damage from swords and blade. Everyone could think of a way to deal with either one of these two characteristics, but if they were put together, it would be extremely disgusting for Wang Yu and the others. Otherwise, they wouldn't even need the help of others. Wang Yu alone could take down these two shameless bosses. They wouldn't need to worry about one thing and lose sight of another. After a moment of hesitation, everyone looked at each other, not knowing what to do. If only we could beat Buzzrook, Hataki Wuwu Kai said gloomily to Unfathomable. It'd be great if we could beat Buzzrook. Are you kidding me? Tianji pursed his lips and said, It's not like you didn't see how vicious that guy is. We can only outrun him. If you want to kite him, he'll just tie you down in minutes. It'd be great if you could fly. That way, he wouldn't be able to hit you guys, Heaven's Secret said with a smile. Fly. As the saying goes, the speaker may not mean it, but the listener may. Unpredictable was only joking. Wang Yu's heart skipped a beat when he heard that, and he quickly looked up. Wuji once said that clearing a dungeon was also a skill. Not only did you need to know yourself and your enemy, as well as the formation, but you also needed to know how to make use of the terrain in the dungeon. The reason why Chuanjin was so successful in both PvE and PvP was not only because of the nuclear weapon Wang Yu, but also because of Wuji's ability to make use of the environment. Of course, although Wang Yu was smart, he was used to using force to solve problems. He didn't have the talent of Wuji, who could come up with a sneak attack based on the terrain. However, it wasn't too difficult to find a suitable place to deal damage in such a large dungeon. Wang Yu looked up at the ceiling of the dungeon, then paced back and forth, trying to find a place where he could stand. However, this instant's dungeon was a giant dragon's lair. The ceiling was so high that they could not see the end of it. Even if there was a place for people to stand on the ceiling, the two of them did not have such a long range to attack. But there was nothing in the sky to look at the ground. After looking up for a long time, Wang Yu began to look around again. Finally, his eyes fell on a corner not far away. Nyoga? What are you doing? Seeing Wang Yu raise his head and turn around, he asked weakly. Meow, this scene was already eerie enough. With Wang Yu's strange behavior, the three of them were so scared that they had goosebumps. I'll think of another way. Wang Yu turned his head and said with a smile. The light in the instant's dungeon came from the willow, the wisps floating around. Wang Yu's sudden smile made the scene look incomparably terrifying. The three of them took 2 steps back in horror and asked in a trembling voice, Then, have you figured it out? Of course I have. After saying that, Wang Yu pointed to a nearby wall and said to the two of them, You two stand there and attack. There? Hearing this, the three of them hurriedly looked in the direction that Wang Yu was pointing. Under the illumination of the willow, the wisps, they could clearly see the position that Wang Yu was pointing at. This lair was a modified cave, so there were many natural stone pillars in the lair. At the position of the stone wall that Wang Yu pointed at, there were 2 thick stone pillars sticking closely to the wall. The 2 pillars and the stone wall formed a space that was neither too big nor too small. Because the stone pillars were round, the space was narrow on the outside and wide on the inside. The entrance could only accommodate a player of average build. Players like Buzzrook and Huzma, who were several meters tall, would definitely not be able to enter. Moreover, Buzzrook's skills were all AoE and non-directional. Although the space between the 2 stone pillars and the wall was not large, it was still enough to hide 3 weak agility-type players. Thus, when Buzzrook unleashed his skills, as long as they hid behind the stone pillars, they would not have to worry about being hit. Oh, this place is not bad. It is an excellent place to deal damage. Both Unpredictable and Seer of Heaven's Secrets were experts. After seeing the terrain that Wang Yu was pointing at, they immediately understood what Wang Yu meant and their faces lit up with joy. Seer of Heaven's Secrets let out a sigh of relief and said, This kind of terrain is suitable for archers to deal damage. It seems that I have nothing to do this time. In your dreams. Wang Yu retorted. Don't even think about slacking off. Hearing Wang Yu's words, Seer of Heaven's Secret's face turned green. I don't dare to stand against Huzma. No matter how weak Huzma was against Wang Yu, it was still a boss. No normal person would dare to compare themselves to Wang Yu. Who told you to stand against Huzma? Wang Yu laughed. Go tank the boss. Tank Buzzrook? Seer of Heaven's Secrets cried. Nyo Gu, we've been through thick and thin together. Why are you still holding a grudge against me? Rather than tank Buzzrook, I might as well go tank Huzma. When Seer of Heaven's Secrets was turned into an undead by Buzzrook, his consciousness was still there. It was just that he could not control his body. That feeling was not good at all. Damn. Wang Yu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Do you think I'm the kind of person who holds a grudge? Did you forget that Buzzrook can summon undead? His undead are all normal-sized. You have to ensure that the archer can deal damage. That shouldn't be a problem, right? Alright. So that's what you're talking about. Seer of Heaven's Secrets clenched his fists and shouted. That's fine. Aside from the fact that Buzzrook's undead could explode, their stats were very average. Furthermore, the spatial entrance could only accommodate one undead. As the boss of the secret pavilion, if Seer of Heaven's Secrets couldn't even deal with a single undead, then he might as well not go out. That's good. Wang Yu nodded his head. Since that's the case, you guys go get used to it first. Once you're done, we'll fight again. Alright. The three replied and went to familiarize themselves with the terrain. A few minutes later, the three returned and reported. Reporting, the terrain is not bad. But there's a problem. Speak. Wang Yu stretched out his hand. That. Seer of Heaven's Secret said worriedly. The space on the wall isn't that big, but we seem to have overlooked something. What is it? Wang Yu asked in confusion. That undead can explode. If any one of them explodes at the entrance, none of us will be able to escape. The space on the wall was a dead end, and the undead's explosion had a range of 500 meters. If it exploded at the entrance, then that small space was practically a free gift. Haha. Wang Yu smiled and said, I thought it wasn't a big deal. There's a condition to trigger the explosion. As long as I keep Huzma's health above 30%, it'll be fine. Then can you kill him in 10 seconds? Seer of Heaven's Secrets asked in astonishment. Chapter 1140. Ah. Hearing Wang Yu's words, Divine Insight was stunned for a moment. Then, he hurriedly reminded, that's beheading. Beheading was not something that could be achieved just because one wanted to. Not only did it require a high level of skill, but the angle and strength of the attack also had to be 100% in line with the target's beheading point. Most importantly, the boss HP had to reach a critical point. Thus, if an ordinary player wanted to behead a target, they could only rely on fate. The probability of beheading was second only to the drop rate of exquisite equipment. Otherwise, if the beheading effect was so easily achieved, the bosses would not be able to survive in the future. From the previous battle, it wasn't hard to tell that the critical point to kill Huzma was around 30% HP. However, given Huzma's size, no one knew the exact location of the critical point. Even if the critical point was drawn on Huzma's neck, it would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens if one wanted to land a hit on it with the right amount of force. After all, Huzma was a boss that could run all over the place, not a stationary target that could be attacked by others. Of course, even if it was a stationary target, without professional training, it would be very difficult for an ordinary person to hit a well-drawn line. Listening to Wang Yu's words, it seemed as if beheading was as easy as eating a meal. Could it be that this guy did not know what beheading meant? Judging from his lack of experience in the game, it was not impossible. Faced with Divine Insight's question, Wang Yu waved his hand and smiled. It's just a beheading effect. I know what I'm doing. Don't joke around. Divine Insight pursed his lips. I don't want to be killed by the boss again. Divine Insight was the one who had the ugliest death. Even now, he still feared death. Is that so? Wang Yu's expression darkened. You don't want to be killed by the boss? Do you want to be killed by me? Of course, Wang Yu was not the kind of person who liked to force others. However, Divine Insight had been very negative ever since they entered the Instance Dungeon. Whether or not the Instance Dungeon was successful depended on a player's attitude. With such a teammate, it was one thing to make trouble for himself, but if he infected others, the Instance Dungeon, which was supposed to be cleared, would most likely be wiped. Wang Yu did this purely to gain insight into the secrets of the heavens. In any case, he was the guild leader. How could he be so useless? F***ck me. As soon as Wang Yu said this, the Divine Insight trio shrunk their necks and shuddered involuntarily. Damn it, they had almost forgotten that this Grandmaster of Combat in front of them was a famous demon who killed without batting an eyelid. Obviously, it was a simple choice to be killed by a super expert player or by the boss. No matter what, the boss might not hold a grudge, but the experts might not. What if the boss chased them for thousands of miles? Let's go, can't we do it? After being threatened by Wang Yu, Inside Heaven's secret immediately became much more obedient and obediently walked towards the stone wall. Seeing fate admit defeat, Unpredictable Fate gulped. His palms were sweaty as he asked, "Should we start the fight now?" "Open it." Wang Yu nodded. Unpredictable Fate and Hataki raised their crossbows and shot at the two bosses. Busrook and Huzma, who were once again aggroed, roared and rushed towards the others. "Nyogo, be careful!" Seeing the bosses rushing towards them, Unpredictable Fate and Hataki turned around and ran. The two bosses chased after them with all their might. Wang Yu rushed forward and blocked the path of Huzma, who was behind Busrook. As the two bosses guarding the entrance, their strength was not to be feared. The main problem was that their symbiotic trait was too disgusting. Wang Yu could easily solo Huzma, while Unpredictable Fate and the other two were stuck in the terrain. No matter how much Busrook attacked, it was to no avail. The summoned undead were a bit annoying, but with Inside Heaven's secret in charge of harvesting them, it was more daunting than dangerous. Of course, this kind of strategy required the player to dodge attacks from time to time, which was much slower than when he was with Wang Yu. However, it was still a boss, and it was unrealistic to instantly kill the boss. As Unpredictable Fate and Hataki fought back and forth, Busrook's HP gradually decreased. Wang Yu had also managed to reduce Huzma's HP to 30%. Wang Yu then stopped attacking and led Huzma away from the boss. 10%, 5%, 1% under the combined attacks of the two, Busrook's HP finally reached 0, and he collapsed to the ground. Immediately after, the three of them looked towards Wang Yu and Huzma, who only had 30% HP left. Seeing Busrook fall to the ground, Wang Yu's figure flickered, and he dodged Huzma's scythe. He then turned around and leaped onto Huzma's neck. Clamping his legs together, he held the crown in his left hand and wrapped his sword around Huzma's neck. 270000 Execution. A huge damage value floated up above Huzma's head. Both Huzma and Busrook transformed into two streaks of light, leaving behind a pile of items as they disappeared. System notice: you have killed, obtained, fuck. Seeing that Wang Yu had really killed Huzma with a single slash, the jaws of those who could see through Heaven's secrets dropped to the ground. Heaven's secrets was unpredictable, and the two of them were also stunned. Fortunately, they were already mentally prepared. Otherwise, they would have reported Wang Yu for cheating. It was just killing. Wang Yu was the legendary martial arts grandmaster. His martial arts had long reached the realm of being able to be used as he pleased. His grasp of strength and accuracy was incomparably accurate. If he could kill Huzma once, then he could kill him twice or thrice. That wouldn't be a problem. However, after killing the two bosses, Wang Yu frowned as he stared at the spot where the boss had disappeared. This is a dungeon. Why didn't the boss's corpse remain? Logically speaking, only wild bosses would do such a thing. What did it drop? What did it drop? Nyogo, what are you spacing out for? Not far away, Insight's excited voices interrupted Wang Yu's train of thought. Wang Yu focused his gaze on the items that Huzma had dropped. Didn't they risk their lives to fight bosses and run dungeons just for this last bit of stuff? It was a first kill and a higher level challenge. The items dropped by the boss would definitely be valuable. It was no wonder why these three were so excited. Thinking of this, Wang Yu smiled. He picked up the items on the ground and displayed their attribute. Summon Undead, rare skill. Summons 2 undead of the same level to assist in battle. Can be assimilated. Required class, Priest Undead Blast, rare skill. Explodes the summoned undead servant, dealing 2000 true damage to targets within a 500-meter radius. Required class, Priest PS. Today, I watched the video of Death announcement beating up his girlfriend. I feel very angry. Uncle Nyo hated 2 types of people the most. 1. People who beat up women. 2. People who ruin their ex after breaking up. Respecting the opposite sex was a man's most basic quality. If he didn't even have this, what else could he be? Chapter 1141. In Rebirth, summoning skills had always been an extremely rare skill. Since the start of the game, Wang Yu had only seen 3 summoning skills with this, Summon the Undead, skill book. The other 2 were in Chun Xiang's hands. As there was no summoner in the game, every profession had its own unique skill system. Being able to summon 2 underlings to fight for him was a great advantage. Looking at the attributes, Summon the Undead was just SOSO. Compared to Chun Xiang, who could summon half a dozen demons with a single shout, it was indeed a lot inferior. No matter what, Chun Xiang was still the warlock's ultimate legendary skill. However, Summon the Undead had a very special attribute, and that was assimilation. Wang Yu was no stranger to the professional term assimilation. In the past, Chun Xiang's summoning skill was actually called Summon Imp. Later on, he assimilated a Summon Skeleton skill book, and it became what it was now. If he assimilated this skill book, it would definitely evolve into an even more powerful skill. Apart from this, the other skill book, Undead Blast, was a little more ordinary. This was because warlocks would learn a skill called Corpse Explosion at level 20, and it was similar to Undead Blast. Corpse Explosion was a buff when the enemy was on the brink of death. After the target died, it would explode on the spot and attack the surrounding target. Undead Blast, on the other hand, had a 3-second prep time, and it also needed to explode its own underlings. In comparison, although Undead Blast's damage was high, it had too many limitations. After all, there were too few summoning skills. This thing could only be considered as a support skill for summoning the undead. It was not even comparable to a regular level 20 skill. Undead Blast was indeed worthy of the word rare. Of course, whether the skill was ordinary or not depended on who had it. Normally, learning these 2 skill books was equivalent to having 2 more attack tools at most. However, if these 2 skill books were to fall into Chun Xiang's hands, it would be equivalent to installing self-destruct devices on his underlings. Not only could they be used as meat shields, they could also be used as mobile explosives at critical moment. I want these 2 skill books. Does anyone have any objections? Wang Yu asked, waving the skill books in front of the 3 players. Wang Yu was a rather magnanimous person. Although Wang Yu had put in the most effort to defeat these 2 bosses, logically speaking, he could choose for himself. However, in Wang Yu's mind, anyone who participated had the right to speak. He couldn't take all the credit for himself, so he had to ask for the opinions of others. These 2 skill books were exclusive to priests. They could only be used by holy priests, witch doctors, and dark warlocks, witchcraft. The 3 of them were either archers or thieves. Moreover, they were no longer level 30 or 40 smurf accounts, where they would be envious at the sight of a rare item. As the common skills of the various classes grew stronger, the players' standards also grew higher. These two skills were nothing special, and since Wang Yu wanted them, no one dared to snatch them from him. Instead, someone said in surprise, "Niu Gu, you want these things? You're not going to pick more?" It couldn't be helped. They were all normal players, and they believed in the principle of taking more. It didn't match Wang Yu's philosophy. Wang Yu waved his hand and said, "These are fine. Then you can take them. If there are any good items later, you can have the first pick," everyone said. Wang Yu wasn't a person who liked to be polite. Hearing the three of them say so, he smiled and put away the two skill books, then revealed a giant scythe. Soul Reaper Scythe, Battle Scythe, Dark Gold, Attack, 300-420 Mana, 200-320 plus 55 Strength plus 44 Vitality, 27 Agility Harvest. Passive skill. Normal attacks have an AoE effect. Critical hits have an additional 20% cooldown reduction. Soul Reaper, passive skill. Every normal attack burns 3% of the target's MP, deals magic damage, and recovers the corresponding amount of MP fear. Passive skill. As the weapon of the undead monarch, after countless years of nourishment, it has been filled with the aura of the undead. 15% chance of causing the target to fall into fear for 3 seconds. Annihilation, active skill. Uses the powerful power of the undead to deal a fatal blow to the target. After the target is killed, all skill cooldowns will be refreshed. Item Introduction. The weapon of the undead monarch, Husmer. It followed Husmer to fight everywhere. After Husmer fell, it didn't leave him and was refined into a netherworld weapon. Class requirement. Warrior Knight level requirement. 75 Netherworld tool. Special talent Curse plus 3. The scythe was a type of battle blade. Although it wasn't popular, it had the highest damage among all long weapons. This Soul Reaper's damage was actually as high as 420. Its main attributes were shockingly high. Moreover, the additional skills and special effects were also quite powerful. AoE attacks, critical hits, fear. No matter which effect it had, they were all indispensable for a warrior. Especially the Soul Reaper special effect, it made up for the warrior's lack of endurance due to young Master Lan. However, the level requirement of 75 was indeed a little daunting. When everyone saw the scythe, they first gasped in surprise, then shook their heads regretfully. However, when their eyes fell on the last line, they couldn't help but light up. Curse. It's actually a curse special effect. Curse special effects were something that players loved and hated in Rebirth. This was because the special effect of cursed weapons was drop rate. It wasn't the drop rate of monsters, but the drop rate of players. Players killed by cursed weapons would at least drop one piece of equipment or item. However, there were specific conditions for a weapon to be cursed. The official explanation was that the weapon had to have enough murderous intent and spirit baptism to be cursed. The simplest and crudest way was to use the weapon to slash someone. For a period of time in the game, there were many players who blocked the city gates and killed alt accounts in order to get their hands on exquisite cursed weapons. The results were self-evident. Curses were a double-edged sword. They had a high chance of dropping other people's equipment, but they also had a high chance of dropping their own equipment if they were killed. Wang Yu could be said to have killed countless people. Moreover, this pair of gloves had been used since the novice village, so it could be said that it had been stained with countless karma. Even so, the martial scholar's Psi curse was only curse +1, and because it had been reforged, it didn't even have +1 now. It could be seen how difficult it was to obtain a curse level. The higher the curse level, the higher the drop rate. The Soul Reaper's curse +3 was simply the best item for killing and robbing. Seeing the Soul Reaper's curse attribute, God's Secret drooled and immediately made a decision. I'll take this weapon for 10,000 gold. The current market price of dark gold equipment was around 10,000 gold. Weapons and armor were slightly higher. However, the Soul Reaper's level requirement was too high, which greatly affected the price. God's Secret's bid of 10,000 gold was not low. Chapter 1142. Here you go. Wang Yu was an easygoing person. Naturally, he would grant any request. Hearing Secret Insight's words, Wang Yu casually tossed the Scythe of Souls to Secret Insight. Secret Insight excitedly caught the Scythe of Souls. He then carefully said, "I don't have that much money on me right now. I'll pay you after we get out of here." "No problem." Wang Yu laughed. "I'm not afraid you won't pay me." Secret Insight was speechless. Of the two bosses, one was a warlock, while the other was a warrior. Although they dropped a lot of items, the requirements were limited to these two classes. Although the following items had decent stats, none of them could be used by the four of them. In the end, everyone agreed to let Wang Yu hold on to the items for now. They would split the loot after they got out of here. As for whether or not they should trust him, it wasn't up to them to decide who was more powerful. At the end of the display, Wang Yu took out 2 rings. After seeing the 2 rings, Wang Yu's expression tightened. A look of surprise appeared on his face, and he almost forgot to display the properties of the rings. Secret Insight and the others were all smart people. As soon as they saw Wang Yu's expression, they immediately guessed that the 2 rings in Wang Yu's hands were definitely good items. So, they hurriedly asked, "Nyogu, what are the properties of these rings?" Hearing this, Wang Yu came to his senses and casually clicked on the display button. Immediately after, the properties of the 2 rings appeared before everyone's eyes. Symbiosis, Ring, Special, Main, Attack, 30-30 Class Requirement, General Level Requirement, 30 Item Description, Treasure of the Undead Monarch Husmer. Only one of this ring can be worn by each player. Symbiosis. When the symbiosis and symbiosis are within 1,000 feet of each other, the symbiosis special effect will be triggered. If the wearer is unable to kill the other wearer within 10 seconds after being killed, the wearer will revive with full health. Symbiosis, Ring, Special, Sub, Mana, 30-30 Class Requirement, General Level Requirement, 30 Item Description, the Treasure of the Necromancer Lord Buzzrook. Only one ring can be worn by each player. Live and Die Together. When the distance between live and die together is within 1,000 kilometers, the special effect of live and die together will be triggered. If the other ring wearer is not killed within 10 seconds after the ring wearer is killed, the slain player will revive with full health. Holy shit! Is this the legendary 2-person suit? Seeing the ring in Wang Yu's hand, the eyes of Inside Heaven's Secret and the others lit up, and they drooled. Double suit, that was a legendary item. He didn't expect it to explode on the 2 guards. Even Wang Yu, who had never been interested in equipment, couldn't help but sigh when he saw the attributes of the 2 rings, let alone these country bumpkins who had never seen anything good. After all, Wang Yu had played with the experts of Chuanjin, so he could be considered half an experienced player. Speaking of which, Wang Yu had also seen items as rare as a 2-person suit. Famous Sword Daoshua and North Siyu had a jungle ring set. In terms of main attributes, these 2 rings were already outdated. A single equipment effect couldn't compare to a normal set. However, the value of these 2 rings' equipment effects was abnormally high. When the few of them fought Husmer and Buzzrook just now, they had seen how disgusting these effects were. That was a godly skill that had unlimited resurrection without a cooldown. Moreover, players' intelligence was much higher than bosses, so they definitely wouldn't be tricked to death like these 2 bosses. With these 2 rings, wouldn't they be able to fly to the sky? Thinking of this, Inside Heaven's Secret and Unpredictable Heaven's Secret looked at each other, and hurriedly reached out to Wang Yu and shouted, "Nyogu, I want it, I want it." "Like hell you want it." Wang Yu curled his lips. "This thing is universal. Whoever doesn't want it, state your price." Although Wang Yu was generous, he wasn't stupid. The Scythe of Souls was useless. If Inside Heaven wanted it, he could have given it to him. This ring was much more valuable than the Scythe of Souls, so how could he just give it away? Since it was universal equipment, it was best to state the price. 1 ring. I'll pay 10,000 gold. As expected of a guild leader, Inside Heaven's secret. He was rich and overbearing. I'll also pay 10,000 gold for the other ring. Unpredictable Heaven's secret shouted after Inside Heaven's secret. Gold coins were not cheap. As a professional sweeper, Hataki's face turned green with fright when he heard that the two of them were willing to pay more than 10,000 gold coins. He lowered his head to indicate his forfeiture. He then pulled a bag of gold coins from Wang Yu and whispered, "I have some money here. It's not much, but I think you really want these 2 rings." "No need." Wang Yu waved his hand and pushed Hataki's bag back. He then smiled at Inside Heaven's secret and Unpredictable Heaven. "I'll also pay 10,000 each." The two of them hesitated. "This, Nyogo, that's not appropriate. You have to pay a higher price than us." "I'll pay in cash." As Wang Yu spoke, he calmly took out 2 bags of money and tossed them on the ground. Seeing Wang Yu's bags of money, the two of them couldn't help but stare blankly. Carrying tens of thousands of gold just to clear a dungeon? Just how rich was this guy? Unfortunately, the two of them guessed correctly. Wang Yu had a lot of gold. It was normal for him to carry tens of thousands of gold with him when he went out. "Do you still want to increase the price?" Wang Yu looked at the two of them and smiled. "But you have to pay in cash." Hearing Wang Yu's words, the Divine Insight duo were instantly at a loss for words. Damn it, not to mention the fact that there were only a few people who possessed assets worth tens of thousands of gold coins. Even if they did, no lunatic would carry so much money with them. Cash. Wasn't that cheating? Nyogo, you're too treacherous. You know that we don't have any cash, Inside Heaven said gloomily. Hee. Wang Yu chuckled. What are you talking about? I'm famous for my integrity. You're slandering me. If you don't have cash, I'll accept these 2 rings. Take it, take it. The all-seeing secret swallowed his saliva and looked at the ring in Wang Yu's hand painfully. His face was filled with regret. If he had known this would happen, he would have brought more money with him. Hee. Wang Yu smiled and tossed the 2 rings into his bag. Seeing Wang Yu casually tossing out 20,000 gold, Hataki Wu exclaimed, I didn't expect that Nyogo is not only powerful, but also rich. Of course, Wang Yu said without modesty, it's because I'm strong that I have money. Our guys in Chuanjin are all millionaires. If there's a chance, I'll introduce them to you. Aya. Speaking of Chuanjin, Wang Yu suddenly paused and said, let's hurry up and clear the dungeon. I don't know how those guys are doing now. Yes, Nyogo will have to let us have the items from the next boss. Chapter 1143. Wang Yu didn't need to worry about the people from Chuanjin. Before these guys met Wang Yu, they had been stirring up trouble everywhere in the gaming circle. It wasn't like they hadn't encountered situations that were more dangerous than this. These guys had plenty of experience in dealing with situations like this. At this time, Yu Huiqing still looked peaceful, but there were waves of murderous intent in the dark. No one knew when it started, but many unfamiliar faces quietly appeared on the streets of Yu Huiqing. In the gaming world, everyone was very busy, and there were constantly new people being born, so no one paid attention to this phenomenon. On the roof of the church on Central Street, the 12 astrological signs gathered together and gave Chuanjin the middle finger in disdain. These dogs from Chuanjin. Without that iron ox, they're actually so cowardly. Now they don't even dare to show their heads. Did they go offline? It was already depressing enough that they had only managed to kill 3 people from the Chuanjin sect after planning for such a long time. Moreover, after the Chuanjin sect was ambushed once, not only did they not search the city for their enemies, but they also immediately disappeared without a trace. The 12 constellations and the others had gathered all their strength to slaughter the entire Chuanjian sect, but now they couldn't even find their opponents. It was truly infuriating. Looking at his angry teammates, Rat said with a face full of black lines, "You guys just can't keep your cool. Do you know that your current state of mind is very dangerous? Why are they hiding? Isn't this the effect they want?" Tiger said angrily, "Then what do we do if they don't come out? We can't just wait here. We have time, but the Grim Reaper and the others are very busy." Rat said confidently, "It's normal for them to hide and not come out. The boss of this group of guys is very smart. He must have guessed that there are professional players behind us. The reason why they haven't come out is because they want to compete with us in patience. They want to try and exhaust the Grim Reaper and the others. If we continue to wait, they will come out soon. Then let's wait a little longer." Listening to Rat's words, everyone's anxious mood slightly calmed down. But at this moment, a message suddenly came in the channel. "There are 4 girls in the trading street. They are from Chuanjian. 4 girls." Seeing this news, the 12 constellations were all delighted. Then, Fifth Dragon raised his dagger and excitedly said, "Boss really has a divine plan. Damn it, these guys finally couldn't hold back and dared to come out. Don't fight with me, these girls are mine." "Wait!" Everyone was gearing up for a fight, but Mouse suddenly stopped them and said, "Why are you so anxious? Haven't you been cheated by the people from Chuanjian? These people must be cannon fodder, here to fish for firepower." After that, Mouse asked in the channel, "Are these girls archers? Is its level high?" Before coming here, 12 celestial signs and the others had already investigated Chuanjian. They knew that apart from the 2 archers, there were no other female players in Chuanjian. Soon, another message came through the channel. "No, these 4 girls' levels are very low. Look, if we go now, we'll definitely alert the enemy. As long as we don't make a move, the next one that comes out will be..." Seeing the message in the channel, Mouse couldn't help but proudly show off that he had seen through Wuji's plan. However, it was obvious that Mouse was the same as Wuji. In the group, he was also the kind of person who was arrogant. The other members of 12 celestial signs not only ignored him, but also gathered together and whispered, "Oh, I didn't think that this group of bastards from Chuanjian would be so popular with women. Yes, today we blocked 2 people, including the last one in these 4. There are a total of 7 people. Damn it, it's also a group of more than 10 people, but they have 7 girls. I'm so envious." "I'm also envious." The people of 12 celestial signs shook their heads and sighed, tears streaming down their faces. Damn it! When Mouse heard this, he clenched his teeth and clenched his fist. He wanted to kick this group of bastards down. At the same time, in Chuanjian's office, Mingdu and the others were also restless, walking around the room. To place one's pride pointed at Wuji and said, "Damn it, Wuji old dog, I don't want to criticize you, but what kind of stupid idea is this? We are a group of men." Exquisite Dream and Yang Na glared at To Place One's Pride. To Place One's Pride was speechless. He looked at the 2 and quickly added, "With women? Ouch! 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 There is no pain in the game." Exquisite Dream casually knocked To Place One's Pride to the ground, then continued To Place One's Pride's words. "Chick is right. We are hiding here and letting those weak girls go out, isn't it a bit too cowardly?" "Don't worry." Wuji smiled and said, "Nothing will happen to them. How can you be so sure? The people outside are chasing after the Quanjin Sex Hun," Bao San shouted from the side. "Alright, don't be like this." Chun Xiang, as an elder, was the most reliable in this crucial moment. He stood up and comforted, "Wuji has his own ideas, we have to believe in him." "That's right." Wuji still did not care about the matter and said, "There is no loss even if they die anyway. F***ck. You piece of trash." Hearing Wuji's words, everyone was instantly enraged. They stood up and surrounded Wuji, intending to beat this bastard up. Just when everyone was in a mess, the girls in the guild channel sent a message. We walked around the trading street, but we did not see the person who sells materials at low prices that boss Wuji mentioned. Then I must be wrong. Wuji replied shamelessly, "You guys go do what you need to do, I'll buy it the next time I see it." "Oh." The girls replied blankly, then closed the message and did not speak anymore. Seeing that the girls were fine, everyone let out a long sigh of relief, then pointed at Wuji and scolded, "If you ask them to go, how can they not go? You actually lied to them that there is someone who sells materials? You even lie to women, trash. Be asterisk starred." Wuji laughed and said, "What do you guys know? I'm just afraid that their acting skills are not up to standard." Be asterisk tch. Facing a troublemaker like Wuji, everyone did not have any temper at all. After scolding him, they asked, "Then what should we do next?" Wuji said, "Let's do that then. Oldly, go take another stroll on the street." "What does that mean?" Mingdu asked in confusion. Wuji smiled and said, "Luring the snake out of its hole. Didn't the girls do it once just now? The person seems to be gone." Everyone continued to be confused. "No." Wuji shook his head and said, "The four of them are of low value, they can't be lured out, we have to be the ones to lure them out." "Then just let Oldly go just now, why did you order the girls around?" everyone asked again. Chapter 1144. Unlike Wang Yu, who was used to using violence to solve problems, a fight between two smart people would always be subtle and not show any signs of weakness. At the beginning, Wuji and Rat had fought. Although Wuji did not know who the opponent was, Rat was able to set a trap for everyone in Chuanjin. It could be seen that he knew everyone in Chuanjin very well. Therefore, both Wuji and Rat knew that the opponent was not easy to deal with. In the face of such an opponent, it was easy to fall into the opponent's trap. Now, Chuanjin was in the light, and the people of the 12 Stars were in the dark. The people of Chuanjin did not even know the identity of the opponent. It could be said that they were extremely passive. If they wanted to regain the initiative, they must replace defense with offense. The first step was to lure the snake out of its hole and figure out the opponent's identity. But Rat was not a joke. If Wuji rashly made a move and directly let Mingdu go out to lure the opponent, Rat would certainly be suspicious and would not be fooled. However, Wuji would first hide and whet the opponent's appetite. Then, he would let the insignificant people go out for a stroll, creating a false impression of fear. Rat's attention would then shift from the starting point of Wuji's, luring the snake out of its hole, to another direction. At this time, Rat would certainly think that the people of Chuanjin were beaten and did not dare to show their heads, instead of hiding and preparing to fight back. In this way, if Mingdu went out again, he could successfully lure out the opponent who was hiding in the dark. In the art of war, this was called a diversionary attack. Wuji's move was to take one more step, so that the opponent could be led into his trap. Otherwise, with Rat's intelligence, he would definitely not be fooled. Sure enough, as Wuji expected, as soon as Mingdu went on the street, the 12 Stars immediately received the news. The people of Chuanjin have appeared. The mage is sneaking around in the south of the city. How is it? I knew it, hee. After receiving the news, Rat chuckled and said, "Those 4 rookies were pulled out by Chuanjin just now. Even if we killed them with their level, we wouldn't lose anything. Now that those girls see that nothing is wrong outside, that coward Chuanjin dares to come out." Well, it seemed like these people who played with tactics were all the same. They didn't care about other people's lives at all. Amazing, amazing! Seeing that someone from Chuanjin really came out, Tiger and the others, who were full of anger, gave Rat a thumbs up and said eagerly, "Let me go. That kid is very arrogant. I've wanted to kill him for a long time." Indeed, in terms of attracting hatred, the ugly and black-hearted Mingdu was also very professional. "Why are you in such a hurry?" Rat was speechless once again when he saw his teammates rubbing their fists. Meow, it wasn't like everyone hadn't seen Mingdu's strength. His magic damage was so high that he could insta-kill anyone he caught. It was reasonable for others to volunteer to catch this kid, but Tiger was a shield warrior. What was there to snatch? To give people PK points? After staring at everyone, Rat said with lingering fear, "That kid's strength isn't weak. To deal with him, we need to find a class that counters his class." "Damn. I'll go." Fifth Dragon and Young Chicken quickly raised their hand. One of them was an assassin and the other was an archer. Both of them were classes that countered magicians. Rat said, "That kid has a teleportation skill. He can insta-kill someone with a raise of his hand. Old Chicken isn't suitable. Big Dragon, you go." "Okay." Fifth Dragon received the order and looked at the others proudly. He disappeared into thin air and ran toward Mingdu's coordinates as fast as he could. Now, in addition to the 12 stars, there was still a professional team waiting for Chuanjin's people in the city. If he was late, his head would belong to someone else. It should be known that Chuanjin's head was worth a lot of money in World of Windcloud. Fertile water shouldn't flow into an outsider's field. The southern part of the city wasn't far from the central street. After a while, Fifth Dragon saw Mingdu's figure. At this moment, Mingdu was walking slowly while sneakily looking around. Coupled with this kid's shifty-looking appearance, he looked very wretched. "Ha ha." Fifth Dragon was delighted and laughed inwardly. "Don't be afraid, your head is mine now." As he spoke, Fifth Dragon had already arrived not far behind Mingdu. He raised his dagger and activated swift movement to rush behind Mingdu. He aimed at Mingdu's back and fiercely stabbed. However, at this moment, Mingdu's figure flashed and turned into a white light, disappearing in front of Fifth Dragon. Mingdu's sudden disappearance caused Fifth Dragon to miss and almost fall to the ground. Before Fifth Dragon could stabilize himself, he heard a sneer behind him. You're still far from being able to kill your daddy, Mingdu." "Yeah." In the end, Fifth Dragon was still a former professional expert, and his skills were extremely nimble. When he heard Mingdu's voice, he was startled. He immediately knew that he had fallen into a trap. He cursed inwardly and rolled forward. He didn't even dare to look back as he broke into a run. After all, he was an agile profession and knew stealth. If he wanted to run, it wouldn't be difficult. However, Fifth Dragon had just taken a step and hadn't started running when a dark barrier suddenly appeared out of thin air. "Duong!" With a muffled sound, Fifth Dragon crashed into the barrier and couldn't move. At that moment, the Chuanjin members walked out from the corner one after another. Wuji pointed his staff at Fifth Dragon and said, "Go and take off his mask. I want to see which reckless fool dares to ambush our Chuanjin." To place one's pride and Mingjian Daoshua as the victims were burning with anger. Without saying anything, they rushed over and pulled off Fifth Dragon's mask. A slender old face and a coquettish mustache, Fifth Dragon used to be a professional player. Apart from his refreshing skills, the most memorable thing about him was his appearance. The people from Chuanjin had just fought with these people a month ago. Of course, they wouldn't forget such a unique appearance. Seeing Fifth Dragon's appearance, everyone immediately shouted, F***CK. It's you. Wuji also came to a realization. No wonder I felt that this tactical arrangement was familiar. Where's your boss? Humph. Fifth Dragon twisted his neck and snorted. Don't expect to ask anything from me. Kill me if you can. In the game, the most worthless thing was life. Anyone would rather die than submit in such a situation. Of course, he didn't think about what kind of people Chuanjin were. How could they do as he wished? Seeing Fifth Dragon's eagerness to die, Wuji laughed. You want to die? How can it be so easy? Catch him. Daoshua, you go. Following Wuji's order, Yin Lao Air and Bao San walked to Fifth Dragon's side and grabbed his arms to prevent him from committing suicide. Then, Mingjian Daoshua reached out to touch Fifth Dragon's chest with a smirk. Seeing this, Fifth Dragon said in fear, Don't come over. I'll report you for sexual harassment." Mingjian Daoxue chuckled. "Go ahead. Our country's laws don't protect men." Chapter 1145. Fifth Dragon was no stranger to Chuanjin stripping others of their equipment. The memory of Windy World being stripped naked and dumped on the streets was still fresh in his mind. Equipment was the most important thing in the game. For a notorious organization like Chuanjin to obtain such an insane skill was simply unheard of. Seeing that he was about to follow in Windy World's footsteps, Fifth Dragon could not help but scream, "Save me! Haha! What an idiot!" Seeing Fifth Dragon's cowardly appearance, the Chuanjin members could not help but laugh. Famous Sword Daoxue even patted Fifth Dragon's chest and laughed as he said the classic lines of villains, "No one will come even if you shout your lungs out." Reality proved that this line was indeed not very auspicious. Anyone who dared to say this line would meet a rather tragic end. Bang! Before famous Sword Daoxue could finish speaking, a thick arrow suddenly whistled through the air as it flew from behind him at an extremely fast speed. By the time everyone heard the sound of the arrow tearing through the arrow had already flown to the back of famous Sword Daoxue's head. Without waiting for famous Sword Daoxue to dodge, the arrow, which was as thick as a child's arm, pierced into the back of famous Sword Daoxue's head, and then exited through his mouth. Famous Sword Daoxue was sent sprawling forward by the huge impact, and only after he was nailed to the ground did he turn into a streak of white light and disappear. A third of the thick arrow had sunk into the ground, and the faintly swaying arrowhead at the back of the arrow was a clear indication of the archer's unparalleled strength. Seeing this scene, the people of Chuanjin were shocked. Even though they were used to seeing abnormal experts like Wang Yu, they broke out in a cold sweat from this arrow. After playing together for so long, everyone knew exactly what equipment famous Sword Daoxue had on him. Although Mingjian Daoxue was a fragile assassin, this brat loved to go around and hunt for treasures. To this day, his defense was no weaker than that of a warrior's. The members of the Quanzhen sect would often mock him for turning an assassin into a warrior. However, such an assassin with a full set of exquisite equipment had actually been killed by an archer with a single arrow. His death was so miserable that it made people's hair stand on end. Especially since the archer was an agility archer, his attack actually burst out with such a strong sense of power, which also made everyone horrified. Seeing that Mingjian Daoxue was killed by an arrow, Wuji hurriedly cried out, "Not good! There was an ambush. Second bro, hold on." Upon receiving the order, Yin Lao did not say a word and rushed to the front of the group. He held his shield horizontally in front of them. At the same time, another 3 thick arrows flew over and hit Yin Lao's shield. Duong! Dunag! Duong! Following 3 violent collisions, Yin Lao was actually forced to take 2 steps back. The heavy shield warrior was forced to retreat. The might of a single arrow was actually so powerful. The expressions of everyone from Chuanjin changed. Just then, a burly player holding a huge bow in the distance was slightly stunned when he saw that his 3 consecutive arrows had actually been blocked. Then, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, revealing a strange smile. He mumbled to himself, "These fellows are indeed interesting." Fifth Dragon, who had already given up all hope, immediately revealed an overjoyed expression when he saw the thick arrows on the ground. He cried out in pleasant surprise, "Boss Death God, save me!" As he shouted, Fifth Dragon ran forward with all his might. Seeing that the cooked duck was about to fly away, Mingdu, who was behind Yin Lao raised his staff and was about to cast a spell. Just as Mingdu was about to condense his spell, the air behind Mingdu distorted. An assassin appeared, raising a green dagger and stabbing it toward Mingdu's back. In the blink of an eye, Mingdu finished condensing his spell. With a flash of white light, He appeared at 5th Dragon's position, and 5th Dragon also appeared under the assassin's dagger. Mingdu was still waiting to loot 5th Dragon's equipment, so he naturally wouldn't kill him. Therefore, he didn't use an attack skill but a spell to swap positions. However, the tragic 5th Dragon still couldn't escape death. Ah! Chen Long let out a blood-curdling scream as he was killed by a teammate who had suddenly appeared. How should he put it? It was actually a good thing that 5th Dragon was stabbed to death. If he didn't die now, he would lose more than just experience later. When the assassin saw that he had stabbed 5th Dragon to death, his figure swayed slightly, and an embarrassed look appeared in his eyes. Wuji glanced at the assassin and said with a smile, "Brother, you look quite familiar." Humph! When the assassin saw Wuji, his expression immediately changed from embarrassment to anger. Then, he rolled backward on the ground, rolled to Yang Na's side, and stabbed his dagger toward Yang Na's ribs. If players had luck, it wasn't difficult to see that this assassin's luck was definitely in the negative. The first time this kid killed a Chuanjian player, he encountered a scumbag like Wuji. Not only did he fail, but he was also blackmailed by the tavern owner. The second time he killed a Chuanjian player, he encountered Mingdu who was in the middle of a sneak attack, and as a result, he mistakenly killed his teammate. For the third time, of all the people he could kill, he actually provoked Yang Na. Yang Na was the number 2 expert in Chuanjian. Although she was an archer, her close combat skills were slightly weaker than Wang Yu's. Seeing that the assassin had rolled to her feet, Yang Na reflexively used an evasive skill and flashed behind the assassin. Then, she raised her foot and kicked the assassin's crotch from behind. The assassin's body arched from the kick, and he lost his balance. Yang Na pulled back her leg and slammed it down, stomping on the assassin's back and stepping on him. Then, she raised the crossbow in her hand, aimed at the assassin's head, and fired randomly. The assassin didn't even have time to groan before he was hit by Yang Na and turned into white light. What a powerful archer! Seeing the assassin die, the tall archer looked at Yang Na in surprise. He knocked an arrow, aimed at Yang Na, and fired. Whoosh! The arrow pierced through the air, brushing past the edge of Yin Lao Air's shield, and flew over everyone's heads, heading straight for Yang Na. Yang Na tilted her head, and the thick arrow brushed past her face like a javelin, stabbing into the ground behind her. The huge wind pressure caused Yang Na's hair to fly up. Yang Na's eyes narrowed. Without a word, she raised the crossbow in her hand and fired a shot in the direction of the arrow. Unfortunately, the opponent's shooting range was surprisingly long. Yang Na's arrow flew halfway before it softly fell to the ground. Humph humph! The tall archer snorted coldly, knocked another arrow, and aimed at the Chuanjian players. Seeing that the opponent's archer was so strong, Wuji hurriedly ordered, "The opponent's archer is too strong. Second bro, cover us. The rest of you, find cover." Yin Lao Air hurriedly retreated, raising his shield to block the archer's attack. The others took the opportunity to retreat. The Chuanjian players had appeared in a small alley that had been smashed randomly, so it wasn't difficult to hide. In an instant, everyone took out their archer weapons. Humph! Chapter 1146. The archer gave the order, and a dozen players appeared at the two ends of the alley with weapons in hand. The alley where the Quan Zhen sect was located was completely blocked. Not only were these players equipped with top-notch equipment, but their temperaments were also very unique. Every one of them had a calm expression and didn't have the impetuous temperament of ordinary players. That kind of unapproachable and aloof aura gave people a sense of closeness but not familiarity. With this kind of temperament standing there, they gave off the feeling of a peerless expert. As the saying goes, the rotten see the rotten, the foundational see the foundational, and the experts see the experts in the same way. Chuanjian's group was also an expert. If it wasn't for the fact that their wretched temperament was more important than anything else, they could also see this kind of extraordinary temperament. Now that they felt this group of people's unique temperament, Chuanzhen's people immediately became vigilant. After looking around, Mingdu frowned and said, "Damn, this group of people are probably professional-level experts?" "Most likely." Wuji nodded when he heard that. Chuanzhen's people had seen a few professional-level experts before. They were people who had been out of this world for a long time, and they didn't have the cynicism of ordinary players who treated the game as a playground. Instead, they had a kind of solemnity that was more like a job. Therefore, ordinary players would unconsciously feel pressure and discomfort when they saw professional players. There was no other reason. Ordinary people came to the game to relieve stress and to pass time, but these people played the game to earn a living. Their attitude towards the game was different, and their temperament would be fundamentally different. It was reasonable for them to feel uncomfortable. At this time, these people all had indifferent expressions, just like those hired killers. There was a sense of solemnity about them. In the eyes of Chuanzhen's people, who were extremely focused on the game, everything was out of place, so it was naturally very easy for them to judge. Of course, Chuanzhen's people had the ability to stir up trouble, and they also had the awareness of being hunted down. Naturally, they wouldn't be afraid just because the other party was a professional player. If it was on a normal day, the Chuanzhen would not be afraid even if there were a few hundred of them, let alone a dozen of them. After all, the Chuanzhen people could fly, so it would be quite difficult to catch them. Even if they could not defeat them, no one could stop them if they wanted to escape. However, it was different today. Ming Jian Daoshua's miserable end served as a warning to the people of Chuanzhen's sect that a powerful and elusive archer was lying in ambush somewhere nearby. Once everyone was out of cover, they would be completely exposed to the archer's field of vision. At that time, being shot to death would only be a matter of an instant. Fighting under someone else's gun was always something to be worried about. Just as the people of Chuanzhen were whispering to each other, the warrior in the lead suddenly said with a cold expression, "Everyone from Chuanzhen, come out. We're going to die sooner or later anyway. Our time is more valuable, so it's better to be efficient and save everyone from wasting time." In the end, they were professional players. Their words were filled with great confidence. It was as if the moment they made a move, the members of Chuanzhen would be instantly killed. Fuck! How arrogant! Hearing the warrior's words, the people of Chuanzhen burst into an uproar. Then, Mingdu yelled at the top of his lungs, "Young man, you're very confident. I like to talk to experts like you. Come over and let's talk face to face." After that, the people of Chuanzhen raised their weapons and prepared to swarm the warrior and beat him to death. Humph humph. Unexpectedly, not only did the warrior not fall for the trap, but he also snorted coldly and said, "We in the netherworld have heard of Chuanzhen's style. I advise you not to have such thoughts. Come out quickly, or our mages will cover you with their firepower." It seemed that the warrior did not look down on Chuanzhen. He knew that these people were good at sneak attacks, so he did not dare to enter the alley rashly. However, when the people of Chuanzhen heard the words netherworld, they were stunned. They did not expect the whole of Windcloud to be so rich that they could actually invite the netherworld. The netherworld was a new team that had emerged in the competitive circle in recent years. Although they were a group of newcomers, they were quite strong and had achieved good results in the national esports tournament for 3 consecutive years. Wuji often boasted to the people of Chuanzhen that if the netherworld invited him to be the strategic commander, winning the championship would be a piece of cake. For someone like Wuji, who had eyes on the top of his head, to be able to make such an evaluation of this group of young people showed their strength. Ayaya! So it's the netherworld. After sighing, Wuji put an invincible on his head and stood up. "Could it be that you're the Death's left hand?" Hearing that, the warrior said calmly, "I'm the Death's right hand. The left hand is our boss, and now his arrow is aimed at you." "Ha ha, ha ha." Wuji awkwardly smiled and said, "Our Quanzhen sect doesn't want to help that unjust ghost. We have no enmity with your netherworld king realm, so why do you have to target us? I've taken your money to eliminate disasters. The Death's right hand still had that unapproachable expression. As he spoke, he waved his hand and the mage's staff behind him aimed at Wuji. Don't. Wuji quickly waved his hand. Since you've taken my money to eliminate disasters, then I'll pay you double the price. How about you go and kill the guy who asked you to kill us? Chuanjin did not lack gold coins. Even if the opponent was a super-rich second generation, Wuji had the confidence to do so. Sure. The Death's right hand said calmly. But we, the Netherworld, have always been honest. Since we've accepted the mission, we can't fail. We can kill you first, then we'll talk about the price of killing your opponent. Heh! Wuji could not help but be amused. This guy's shameless manner really had the temperament of Chuanjin. Alright, enough with the nonsense. Prepare to die. At this moment, seeing that the invincibility effect on Wuji had disappeared, the Death's right hand narrowed his eyes. He lowered his head and rushed to Wuji's side. He waved his longsword and slashed at Wuji's neck. Seeing the Death's right hand rushing over, Wuji calmly took a step back. At the same time, he raised his staff and a red light fell, covering Wuji before the Death's right hand's longsword could hit him. Bam! With a muffled sound, the Death's right hand shook as if it had slashed a stone. At that time, Bao San rushed out and slammed into the Death's right hand. The Death's right hand was caught off guard and was sent flying. In the distance, the Death's right hand saw that his underling was hit. He knocked his bow and was about to shoot Bao San's head. But at this moment, Yin Lao Air jumped out with his shield, blocking in front of Bao San and the Death's right hand, blocking the Death's left hand's line of sight. Chapter 1147. A series of sword lights instantly swallowed up Death God's right hand. In a battle between masters, a single flaw could determine victory or defeat. Although Bao San wasn't a professional level master, he wasn't much worse than Death God's right hand. Now, he had launched a sneak attack. Death God's right hand had been hit by Bao San's charge, and then he had blocked two of Bao San's powerful attacks. Even an expert like Death God's right hand had been reduced to critical health. Death God's right hand was knocked into the air, and then fell to the ground. Just as Bao San was about to rush up and finish him off, the other three melee masters from Underworld, Azura, Blood Fiend, and Hades, saw Death God's right hand being ambushed and also rushed over. These three people were Guardian Knight, Shield Warrior, and Retribution Knight. Along with Death God's right hand, these three were known as the four great melee masters of Underworld. As professional level masters, to be able to be on par with Death God's right hand, it could be seen that these three were no weaker than Death God's right hand. As for Yin Lao Air, his main goal was to block Death God's right hand's arrows. Now that these three had rushed over to help, he naturally wouldn't be able to block them. Before Bao San could jump up, Blood Fiend had already raised his shield to block in front of Bao San, blocking Bao San's heavy attack. While Bao San was still in a daze, Azura raised his scepter and smashed it into Bao San's head, sending him flying into the air. At the same time, Hades' lance trembled and stabbed towards Bao San's chest. Seeing that Bao San was about to lose his life to the three experts, Hidden Pride suddenly appeared in front of Bao San. He leaped up and kicked Hades with a radiant kick. Flickering chain kick. Hades was a great master, so he naturally recognized the legendary End Generation kick. Seeing To Place One's Pride use this skill, Hades immediately crouched down. To Place One's Pride flew over Hades' head and kicked towards Azura and Blood Fiend. The two took a step back. Blood Fiend raised his shield and Azura slapped his scepter, turning it into a holy light that covered Blood Fiend's shield. Bang! To Place One's Pride kicked the shield and landed on the ground. The holy light shattered, and Xue Sha and Xue Sha were kicked back a few steps before they could stabilize themselves. Hades stood up and twisted his spear, thrusting it straight towards To Place One's Pride's back. At the same time, Bao San arrived behind Hades and slashed his sword at the back of Hades' knee. Hades knelt down on one knee, his spear almost flying out of his hand. While the few of them were fighting, the Grim Reaper's right hand finally had a breather. He gulped down a bottle of medicine, turned around, and swung his long sword, ready to return to take revenge on Bao San. At that moment, a staff appeared from a corner. Gotcha! With a clap of thunder, the Grim Reaper's right hand exploded into a white light. Then, Mingdu poked his head out and mocked, "Haha, you guys are finished." Everyone from the Netherworld King realm was stunned. Before he could understand what was going on, he saw a wretched-looking warlock in a green hat jump out from behind Bao San. The warlock held a book in his left hand and raised it above his head, summoning a line of demons to block the other Netherworld King realm masters at the other end of the alley. The warlock smashed the handle of his staff into the ground and shouted, "In the heavens and earth, only I am supreme." Suddenly, a circle of darkness drilled out from the ground, locking them in place. Not far away, Mingdu chuckled and cast a spell with both hands. Thunder and fire smashed towards Hades and the others. Bao San didn't stay idle either. He swung his great sword and activated Whirlwind Slash. In an instant, the three were killed by the combined forces of the Chuanjian Realm Masters. As the four Netherworld King Realm Masters were killed, the Grim Reaper's left hand also smashed through Yin Lao Air's defense. Terrifying arrows flew out one after another, stabbing into the ground in the alley and making buzzing sounds. The Chuanjian Realm Masters, who had planned to break through the Netherworld King Realm's defense line and rush out of the alley, were once again suppressed and quickly hid in a corner. In just one round, 4 of their brothers had been killed. The other Netherworld King Realm Masters couldn't help but be enraged. They directly attacked with all their might, throwing magic spells at the place where Chuanjian was hiding as if they were free. This bunch of retards. Seeing that the Netherworld King Realm Masters were incomparably angry but didn't dare to go forward and could only vent by throwing skills, the Chuanjian Realm Masters were secretly delighted. Wuji was even more pleased with himself as he boasted, "Do you see that? This is the difference between having a good commander and not having a good commander. I already said that if I were to lead these youngsters in the competition, we would have already won the F*King Championship. Cut the crap. What should we do now? Should we rush out from the other side of the alley?" The terrifying archers in the dark could take their lives at any time, and a series of magic spells were exploding around them. It was not a good feeling. The Chuanjian Realm Masters didn't want to stay here a moment longer. "Don't worry," Wuji said with a smile, "this is our territory. They won't be able to stir up any trouble." "Is that so? I think we're in trouble." Hearing Wuji's words, Yang Na pursed her lips and pointed at the two ends of the alley. Everyone hurriedly looked in the direction Yang Na was pointing and saw that the entrance of the alley was filled with mercenaries. At this time, they were walking towards the place where Chuanjian and the others were hiding. F***CK. Seeing this, the Chuanjian Realm Masters were shocked. These guys from the Netherworld King were indeed ruthless. They were afraid that their own people would die and lose experience, so they actually called so many mercenaries to be cannon fodder. Mingdu cried out sadly, "It's over. Under the command of that old dog Wuji, we've successfully been surrounded like dumplings. Let's meet at the resurrection point." "TSK," Wuji said disdainfully, "they want to catch us with just these few people? You're overestimating this group of trash. They still have professional experts behind them," Mingdu retorted. Humph. Wuji was still unhurried as he said, "Don't be anxious, wait slowly. There will always be a way out when the time comes, understand? Take out the mahjong, let's play a few rounds." Everyone was speechless for a moment, then said in unison, "Playing mahjong is so boring. Why don't we beat you up?" Damn it, even at a time like this grandson still had a relaxed look on his face. The members of the Chuanjian sect were at a complete loss. If you have any tricks up your sleeves, just tell us. I hate those who keep us in suspense the most." While the Chuanjian realm masters were rubbing their palms and getting ready to beat up Wuji, Grim Reaper's left hand, who was lying in ambush in the dark, suddenly received a message from Rat. The message only had 3 words: "Grim Reaper, retreat." Retreat? Seeing Mouse's message, Grim Reaper's left hand was dumbfounded. Puzzled, he replied, "You must have drunk too much. I'm about to wipe out the Quan Jin sex group in one fell swoop. Why are you retreating? I even saved your subordinate's life just now. Don't tell me you're thinking of stealing my kill?" "Soon," Rat replied angrily. F***ck. We've known each other for a long time. Am I that kind of person? If I tell you to retreat, then hurry up and retreat. Otherwise, it'll be too late." Although he did not know what Rat meant, as an old acquaintance of Rat, Grim Reaper's left hand knew what Rat was capable of. Sigh. Helpless, Grim Reaper's left hand sighed and ordered, "The situation has changed. Everyone, retreat." However, just as Grim Reaper's order was sent out, he immediately received a message from his subordinate. "No. We can't retreat anymore." Grim Reaper's left hand was stunned when he heard that. "What do you mean?" Chapter 1148. We've been surrounded? Seeing his subordinate's message, Grim Reaper's left hand hurriedly looked down and saw that the alley that Chuanjian was hiding in was filled with players. Moreover, there were countless players swarming in from all directions. In the blink of an eye, the streets, alleys, ground, and roofs were all filled with people. The mercenaries and other masters of the Netherworld King realm that were closing in on the Quan Jin group were completely surrounded by them. Blood Alliance? Blood Alliance was an old guild and also a professional esports team. As someone in the same industry, Grim Reaper's left hand obviously recognized Blood Alliance's badge. When Grim Reaper's left hand saw the badge on the players' chests, he couldn't help but cry out. He didn't think that Blood Red War flag would interfere at this time. Of course, with Grim Reaper's left hand's personality, he wouldn't argue with Blood Red War flag about why they suddenly appeared and targeted him. After all, these mercenaries had appeared in Yu Huiqing to surround Yu Huiqing's players first. Grim Reaper's left hand and Blood Red War flag weren't on the same level. Seeing Blood Alliance suddenly appear, Grim Reaper's left hand could only grit his teeth and send a message. "I'll cover you. Go back underground." After sending the message, Grim Reaper's left hand took out a row of arrows and knocked them on his bow. The bow was like a full moon and the arrows flew out. Pung, pung, pung. With a series of sounds, several thick arrows flew out and pierced through the Blood Alliance players surrounding the Underworld players. They were then nailed to the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. F***ck. When the Blood Alliance players saw the thick arrows on the ground, they felt a chill in their hearts. They hurriedly went around the Underworld experts and didn't dare to get close. The Underworld players took the chance to go back underground and disappear into the sea of people. Seeing his subordinates leave, Grim Reaper's left hand knew that his position had been detected. Facing tens of thousands of Blood Alliance players, Grim Reaper's left hand obviously wouldn't fight them head-on, so he logged out of the game without a word. At the same time, Quan Jin, who saw the Blood Alliance players coming to save the situation, came to a realization. No wonder Wuji was so fearless. He had actually called for Blood Red War flag to help him. The Grim Reaper's left hand was only responsible for his own brothers. As for the cannon fodder mercenaries, they weren't so lucky. Blood Alliance had many players, and there were tens of thousands of them online every day. As soon as they received Wuji's message, Blood Red War flag told all of their players to put down what they were doing and return to the city to help. When the Blood Alliance players saw the mercenaries, it was as if they had seen a boss. They surrounded them, raised their weapons and started killing. Mercenaries usually bullied normal players. Compared to players from a big guild like Blood Alliance, they were like a motley crew compared to a proper army. What's more, there was such a huge disparity in numbers between the two sides. The mercenaries naturally could not hold on any longer. They were annihilated in minutes, turning into white light and flying to the resurrection point. Big guilds had always been professional in hunting down players. As one of the top guilds, Blood Alliance's professionalism was at the max. At this time, an inescapable net had already been laid at the resurrection point. The moment the mercenaries reappeared, they were sent back to the resurrection point. After dying twice, the mercenaries knew that they had messed with a metal plate. They didn't dare to fight to the death anymore. Without thinking, they went offline and hid. After the danger was over, Wuji smiled and walked out. He cupped his fists and thanked the Blood Alliance players. Brothers, thank you. Chuanjin will remember today's matter. If Blood Alliance has any problems in the future, just say the word. The Blood Alliance players smiled and didn't say anything. They had been in Yuhuiqing for so long and understood Chuanjin's character. Although these bastards were always jumping around and had no morals, they were really good to their friends. If not, Blood Red War Flag wouldn't have been so anxious to ask them to return to the city to help. Some players who liked to talk nonsense even shouted, "Boss Wuji, what kind of money-making project are you thinking of us this time?" Indeed, after working with Chuanjin a few times, Blood Alliance had received a lot of benefit. The Blood Alliance players had been raised well. What are you talking about? What money? All of you shut up. At that time, Blood Red War Flag walked out from the crowd and came in front of Chuanjin. He asked curiously, "Who are you guys messing with this time? I think I saw people from Hades world. How did you guys mess with them? These people are famous for being poor in the industry. You won't be able to get much out of them." Hee. Wuji smiled awkwardly and said, "Old Chi, our Chuanjin sect has always been peace-loving. From what you're saying, it sounds like you have a lot of prejudice against us. Can't you see that we're being blocked at our doorstep? It's obvious that someone is messing with us." "Messing with you?" When Blood Red War Flag heard this, his eyes widened like bells. He then curled his lips in disbelief. These professional players are so free. As he said this, Blood Red War Flag tiptoed and looked behind Wuji. He then asked, "Why don't I see Nyogu?" Wuji spread his hands and said, "They are messing with us. Our old cow is nowhere to be found and we can't contact him. I suspect that he was stolen by them." "Ugh. Wuji, you really know how to joke." Blood Red War Flag did not believe Wuji's words. Not to mention Wang Yu's incredible abilities, even if he was a normal person, he would not be stolen. He was not a child. Blood Red War Flag didn't believe it, and Wuji was too lazy to explain. He waved his hand and asked, "Where are the people from Hades world?" "They went offline." Blood Red War Flag's expression changed. "You didn't see it just now. The archer in their team is like a cheat. Normal attacks can be used as AoE attack. We saw it. The archer is their boss, Death's left hand." Not only the Blood Red War Flag, but even the people from the Quan Zhen sect also had a lingering fear of that abnormal archer. Since ancient times, archers had cheats. It was true. TSK. If such an expert could be in our Blood Alliance, it would be beautiful. Blood Red War Flag sighed again. Seeing that Blood Red War Flag was immersed in the pleasure of being abused, Wuji waved his hand and interrupted it. He then asked, "Where are the mercenaries under Hades world? That group of trash is too scared to come out." Blood Red War Flag's face was full of disdain for this group of mercenaries. "Has there been anyone who has seen the 12 constellations?" Blood Red War Flag wondered. "The 12 stars? They have a part in this?" "Yes." Wuji nodded and asked Blood Red War Flag, "Does your guild have anyone in the Mage Academy?" "Of course." Blood Red War Flag patted its chest and said, "The revival point is full of our people." Chapter 1149. To deal with a small group like Chuanjin, sneak attacks and assassinations were the most effective way. In order to take revenge, Whole of Windcloud spent a lot of money to hire professional-level experts to help deal with Chuanjin. However, Wuji was still more skilled. The sudden appearance of the Blood Alliance directly messed up the rhythm of Rat and the others. Luckily, Rat was a vigilant person. He had already sensed the Blood Alliance's arrival and escaped in advance. Otherwise, he would have ended up like the mercenaries, killed by the Quanzhen sect and the Blood Alliance. One had to know that Chuanjin was a group of people who would look for something to do. They were people who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. As the mastermind of this matter, the 12 Stars would definitely have a much worse ending than the others. In the chaos, Rat and his men escaped out of the city and only stopped when they could no longer be seen. Not many people had experienced being surrounded by tens of thousands of people before. Along the way, Tiger and the others experienced what it meant to panic. After the panic, the 12 Stars cursed F***CK. That group of shameless people actually called for reinforcements. Yeah, F***CK. The Blood Alliance and Chuanjin are on the same side. I was so scared that I wanted to pee in my pants. This group of trash colluding with each other. A group of people who did sneak attacks and scolded others for being shameless. The pot calling the kettle black. Of course, if this kind of scolding was useful, the people from Chuanjin would have been scolded to death. The 12 Stars were just cursing. After their emotions calmed down, everyone gradually calmed down. Tiger thought about it and asked, "What do we do now? Do we still go back to kill them?" The 12 constellations had originally planned to teach the Quanzhen sect a lesson, but the result was not only that 5th dragon had been killed, but several masters from the Netherworld King realm had also died. Not a single mercenary had been spared. This was a typical case of trying to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice. The 12 Stars were all prideful people. After being tossed around like this, how could they take this lying down? Go back my ass. Rat heard this and said angrily, "Our identities have been exposed. If we go back, who knows who will be killed? Then what do we do? Our strategy." Everyone was at a loss. It was all Blood Alliance's fault for suddenly appearing and messing up their strategy. "Tactics my ass," Rat said. "There have never been any fixed tactics. Improvisation is the highest realm." "What should we do next?" everyone asked. The Rat replied indifferently, "Salat? Now that they're in our territory, it's no longer up to them." Blood Alliance's efficiency was quite high. Not long after, Blood Red War Flag received a set of coordinates and sent it to Wuji. Looking at the coordinates of the 12 constellations, Wuji frowned and said, "These fellows are quite vigilant. They have already run out of the city." "Outside the city?" Blood Red War Flag was confused. "Where are they going? Do we need to chase after them?" "No need." Wuji waved his hand and said, "The map outside the city is too big, and having more people won't necessarily be an advantage. Furthermore, these guys should be heading to Salat City. It's inconvenient for you to have so many people, so we'll handle the rest ourselves." "Salat City? Are you going to cross the city to kill me? That's not easy." Hearing the 3 words, Salat City, Blood Red War Flag frowned. Chasing after them across the main city was still something that crossed the border. If they were not careful, they might be ganged up on. It was not that Blood Red War Flag did not trust Chuanjin, but that no matter how strong Chuanjin was, they had no home advantage when they were in someone else's territory. Furthermore, Wang Yu was not here. If they crossed the city, they might be at a disadvantage. No matter what, they were old acquaintances. Blood Red War Flag felt that it was necessary to remind them. "It's okay." Wuji smiled and said, "As long as you know how to improvise, you won't be at a disadvantage anywhere. Just leave a few people for me to scout the coordinates." After saying that, Wuji waved to the Chuanjin people and said, "Let's go. Let's take revenge on Salat." "Okay." The Chuanjin people nodded with resolute expressions and followed behind Wuji. Seeing that Wuji was determined to chase after them, Blood-Red War Flag could not stop him. They could only tell him to take care, then instructed a few players from the Wizard Academy to add Wuji as a friend and provide him with the coordinates of Rat and the others. In the Instance Dungeon, Wang Yu's group of 4 had already arrived at the gates of the Undead City. When they arrived at the city gates and saw the Undead City gates, they were all dumbfounded. The gates of the Undead City were blocked by a pile of solid white bones. There wasn't a single gap between the gates. How was this a King gate? It was more like a city gate built on the wall. As the class with the highest strength among the 4, Wang Yu walked over and pushed the white bones. The pile of white bones did not budge at all. It was abnormally solid. Wang Yu narrowed his eyes and smashed his fist against it. Bang! After a muffled sound, the white bones did not even shake. Not even a single bone fragment fell off. At this time, Wang Yu said thoughtfully, "This is an indestructible scene. Everyone, look around and see if there are any traps?" Hearing this, the 3 people hurriedly looked around. However, the surroundings of the Undead City were clear at a glance. There was nothing special about it. The 4 of them searched for a long time but found nothing. They could only resentfully return to the city gates. "Did you find anything?" Wang Yu asked. No, the 3 of them spread their hands. They could see everything here at a glance. Was there a need to ask if there was anything? No way, Wang Yu scratched his head and thought as he sighed. If only Wuji was here. He would definitely know what to do. Just as Wang Yu was racking his brain trying to think of a way to enter the city, Hataki Might 5 Open suddenly pointed at the spot where Huzma and Busrook had just occupied and asked, "What's that?" Hearing this, the 3 of them hurriedly looked in the direction that Hataki Wuwu was pointing at. They saw that the 2 bosses were standing on a circular bone platform. As the color of the platform was the same as the ground, and the light in the dungeon was dim, it was difficult to see it without looking carefully. She was a girl after all, so she was very meticulous. After seeing the bone platforms, the 4 of them quickly walked over and saw what they looked like. The 2 bone platforms looked exactly the same. In the center of each bone platform was a circular inlay. From the outline, the inlays seemed to be a pair of rings. Seeing this, Wang Yu took out the mutual death rings that he had obtained from the 2 bosses. At that moment, a hidden attribute appeared under the ring in Wang Yu's hand. Undead Key. Place both rings on the bone throne at the same time to summon the undead lock. At the same time? Wang Yu rubbed his chin and stuffed one of the rings into Hataki Wuwu's hand. "I'll count to 3 and put them in at the same time." "Okay." Hataki Wuwu accepted the ring. 1, 2, 3. Clack. Chapter 1150. The lock looked like a box with 9 squares arranged on it. The 9 squares were red, yellow, and blue. They were arranged in a disorderly manner and looked quite strange. What's this?" Wang Yu asked the others in confusion when he saw the strange lock. Wang Yu was a person who knew his own limits. He knew these strange things in the game, but he did not know as much as the others. Unexpectedly, the other 3 shook their head. I'm not sure." On the other hand, Hataki pointed at the bone platform and said, "Didn't they say it's called Undead Lock?" Wang Yu frowned when he heard that. Then, he said to Secret Insight, "Go open it." As a thief, Secret Insight definitely knew how to pick lock. Since this thing was a lock, it should be able to be opened. "I've never seen such a strange lock before," Secret Insight mumbled unwillingly. Secret Insight grumbled reluctantly. However, due to Wang Yu's tyranny, he did not dare to disobey. Hence, he had no choice but to run up to the lock and use his unlock skill. As expected. System notification. Incorrect unlock method. Secret Insight spread his hands and said helplessly, "I can't open it." "Can't open it?" Wang Yu carefully observed the appearance of the undead lock again. Then, he asked in confusion, "Does it have something to do with the 9 squares on the lock?" That makes sense. Hataki's eyes lit up when he heard Wang Yu's words. He clapped his hands and said, I got it. It should be to arrange the colors into a sequence. Can you do this? Wang Yu asked. Although the 9 squares looked simple, the colors were all mixed up, just like a bunch of random numbers. It was annoying to look at. Of course, Hataki said proudly. I'm an expert at puzzles. Hataki Wu Wu Kai walked over and slid his finger on the 9 squares of the undead lock. A notification appeared on the squares. Arrange the 3 colors according to red, yellow, and blue. Move 3 steps at a time. Only up, down, left, and right. Seeing this prompt, everyone came to a realization. What bullsh *t undead lock? It turned out to be the simplest Rubik's Cube, and a one-sided one at that. The Rubik's Cube was something even kids could play with. After learning that the lock was a mechanism, Secret Insight said in disdain, Tisk, so it's that simple. I thought it was some awesome mechanism. Simple? Just as the words of the inside of Heaven's secrets fell, Wang Yu suddenly froze. At that moment, Hataki had started playing. At the same time, a notification popped up on the Rubik's Cube. Wait, Hataki mumbled. It's Rubik's Cube. Hataki Wu Wu Kai muttered, Don't be in such a hurry. Don't think that there's only one side of this Rubik's Cube. This isn't a Rubik's Cube. As he spoke, Wang Yu walked over and pulled Chimu to the side. This is clearly a trap. A trap? That can't be. Isn't there a guide on it? Hearing Wang Yu's words, everyone was a little confused. The method to unlock the lock was clearly written, so how did it become a trap? Could it be that the system would lie to them? Of course, the system wouldn't lie, but it would. You're too naive. Wang Yu pointed at the undead lock speechlessly. There's no order on it. The door will open after you're done. Who knows, a boss might be released after you're done. That can't be. Hearing this, everyone was stunned. Although they weren't top players, they weren't newbies either. After playing games for so long, even if they didn't know as much as Wang Yu, they had more or less experienced how shameless designers could be. Based on the shamelessness of those guys, what Wang Yu said might not be impossible. It might even be worse. Then, what about the NI? Everyone had a helpless look on their faces. If they opened it, a boss might appear. If they didn't open it, they wouldn't be able to enter the city. This was basically forcing the players to submit. Wang Yu thought for a moment, then waved his hand at the others. Get out of the way. Oh! The 3 of them quickly retreated behind Wang Yu. Seeing the 3 of them retreat, Wang Yu stepped forward and punched the undead lock. Bang! -31445 with a dull thud, a damage number appeared above the undead lock. At the same time, a health bar appeared above the undead lock. The 3 of them hurriedly cast a detect spell on the undead lock. They discovered that the undead lock also had an attribute. Undead lock LV70. Special, HP, 100000000 MP, 0 skills, none talent, sealed background introduction. Because it was too powerful to be fully controlled, it was sealed in the undead lock by the evil dragon Dominic and placed here to guard the door. The undead, who had been silent for many years, couldn't wait to break the seal. For every additional step the player took to unlock the seal, the attributes of the undead increased by 10%. F***CK. The 3 of them looked at each other. Their backs were numb, and their faces showed a look of horror. Damn it, this designer really had no conscience at all. He actually arranged such a trick. If it wasn't for Wang Yu stopping him, with the complicated steps of unlocking the lock, who knew what kind of crazy boss would be unlocked? The 2 bosses guarding the door were already so overpowered, not to mention the thing that was locked inside. This was a boss designed by a large-scale team like the Needle Guild, and it was sealed because it was too powerful to be controlled. How could it be so easy to deal with? Fortunately, Wang Yu was quick-witted. He saw through the designer's routine at a glance and smashed it violently. Now that the boss was locked in the lock and couldn't fight back, it could only stand there and take a beating even though it had tens of millions of HP. Divine Insight and the other two weren't useless. Seeing that this undead lock couldn't fight back, who didn't want to go over and deal damage? The few of them surrounded this broken lock and beat it up. In just a few minutes, the HP of the undead lock was emptied and turned into a pile of fragments scattered on the ground. System notification. You killed a powerful sealed undead, gained EXP. After the notification, the fragments on the ground and the 2 bone platforms disappeared. Ding! Wang Yu's 2 rings fell to the ground. The 4 of them looked at the place where the undead lock disappeared, and their hearts were filled with emotion. This boss that didn't even have a name was easy to fight, but as the first kill, this thing was too stingy. It didn't even drop a single hair. In fact, it made sense. With the way Wang Yu and the others fought the boss, it would be strange if the boss dropped anything. Chapter 1151. After the undead lock was broken, an opening appeared on the city gate of the undead city, which was made of piles of bones. Wang Yu and the others swaggered into the city. This city was truly deserving of its name. Both inside and outside were dead silent. There was not a single living person. After entering the city gate, Wang Yu and the others saw another wall made of bones. Unlike the previous wall, this bone wall was incredibly tall. In such a dark environment, it was so tall that the top could not be seen. Logically speaking, it should be connected to the top of the nest. Rather than calling it a wall, it was more appropriate to call it a castle. The only entrance and exit on the wall was a drawbridge. At this time, the drawbridge was retracted, blocking the exit. Below the tall white bone walls was a moat. The moat was flowing with dark red water. It was eerie and looked like blood. It was exceptionally terrifying. Even with Wang Yu's courage, he felt a little disgusted when he saw the river, let alone Chimu. After all, he was a law-abiding citizen who had never seen blood. Suddenly seeing ketchup would cause him to feel conflicted. However, although the moat wasn't too wide, only about 20 meters wide, there was no foothold on the other side. If they didn't lower the drawbridge, they would have to cross the moat if they wanted to enter the city. Nyogu, do you know how to swim? Tianji thought for a moment and asked Wang Yu. I won't. Wang Yu shook his head decisively. As a northerner, Wang Yu rarely saw water. Moreover, Wang Yu was the Wang family's baby. He didn't even have enough time to practice martial arts. Why would he let him play in the water? It was reasonable that he didn't know how to swim. Why do you ask? Wang Yu asked in confusion. Tianji said, swim over and lower the drawbridge. Swim over? Wang Yu frowned. He picked up a stone and threw it into the water. Puff, a cloud of green smoke floated up. No one heard the sound of the stone falling into the water. The stone was vaporized into a cloud of smoke. F***CK. Seeing this scene, everyone shuddered, especially Tianji Unpredictable, who was about to swim over. At this moment, his hair was standing on end. Damn, this moat wasn't water. It was sulfuric acid. Fortunately, he had jumped in first. Otherwise, he would have died without a corpse. It would have been fine if he had only died once, but if he had melted all his equipment, who the hell was he supposed to complain to? Tianji asked with lingering fear. Then what do we do? There aren't any traps here. Right now, the scene here wasn't that big. It could be said that it could be said that it could be seen at a glance. Whether or not there were any mechanisms could be seen at a glance. Mechanism. Wang Yu looked around, then looked at the drawbridge in front of her. With a leap, she landed on the wall beside the drawbridge with a few leaps. Wang Yu leaned on the wall and checked carefully, but there was no result. So Wang Yu shook his head and jumped back. Not being able to find anything was within Wang Yu's expectations. After all, to explore the drawbridge, they had to cross the river. Normal players didn't know Qigong or flying, so the system couldn't give them a dead end. Therefore, Wang Yu didn't have much hope when he jumped over. After Wang Yu's investigation, there were no traps next to the drawbridge. They were completely helpless. Hataki looked at the drawbridge and shouted in despair, "There's no trap. We can't just shout for help, right?" Shout for help? Hearing Hataki's words, Wang Yu's eyes suddenly lit up. He immediately shouted, "Open the door. We want to enter the city." Seeing that Wang Yu really did shout, Hataki's face turned red. He pulled on Wang Yu's clothes and said, "Nyogu, what are you doing?" "I'm joking." Creak! Before Hataki Wu Wu Kai could finish his sentence, a strange sound came from the top of the walls. Then, the drawbridge creaked and swayed before it slowly descended. Boom! A few seconds later, the drawbridge landed across the moat. Hataki, Kakashi, and the others were completely dumbfounded. They stared at Wang Yu blankly and said, That actually works?" They had played the game for so many years and had seen many similar scenes, but this was the first time they heard of the city gate being opened by shouting. That was King ridiculous. At this moment, everyone finally understood why Wang Yu was an expert with top-tier equipment, while the others were doing so poorly. It turned out that this petty bourgeoisie's way of thinking, when playing the game, was completely different from normal people. They did not play by the rules at all. The system was even more despicable. It just had to fall for this trick. Why not? Seeing that everyone was so confused, Wang Yu asked in return, "Haven't you guys been scammed by the system before?" Scammed. Everyone nodded. Wang Yu curled his lips and said, "You guys still don't learn from it. How stupid." Ugh! Faced with Wang Yu's merciless mockery, everyone chose to remain silent. What the F***ck are these game designers? They don't let people play the game properly at all. The gaming experience is terrible. The drawbridge was lowered. Wang Yu stepped onto the bridge and entered the gigantic castle. Seeing that Wang Yu had entered the castle safely, the others were relieved and walked onto the drawbridge. It couldn't be helped. They had seen how shameless the system was twice in a row. If they didn't learn from their mistakes and walked onto the bridge, they wouldn't be stupid, they would be stupid. Wang Yu could fly, so he was naturally not afraid of the traps on the bridge. Therefore, everyone was relieved when Wang Yu walked in front. Obviously, the system's shamelessness had a bottom line. At the very least, it didn't design a single-use drawbridge. After entering the castle, the scenery suddenly lit up. Wang Yu and the others were dizzy from the light. Looking around, they saw piles of gold coins and jewels around the castle. The walls of the castle were embedded with fist-sized luminous pearls. The soft light reflected off the bones and shone on the jewels, diamonds, and gold coins, making the castle as bright as day. Even a rich person like Wang Yu, who was used to seeing gold coins, was dumbfounded. Compared to this luxurious castle, Holy Dragon King Dale's golden castle was like a country bumpkin. Undead evil dragons were dragons, after all. Their obsession with glowing objects was imprinted in their bones. Of course, it wasn't just dragons that had the characteristics of dragons. There were also women. No matter how beautiful or ugly they were, no woman could resist the temptation of jewels. Hataki Wu Wu Kai's soul almost flew out of her body when she saw the castle full of jewels. She walked to the pile of jewels in a daze and picked up a handful of diamonds. She said excitedly, "Why are we still doing the dungeon? We can just stay here." F***ck. This kid is crazy. Hearing this, everyone clenched their fists. Chapter 1153. F***ck. What the H***ll? The sudden appearance of this fellow gave everyone a fright. In terms of stature, this person was no different from an ordinary player. The only difference was that this person's skin was very pale, and his entire body exuded a gloomy aura. What was even more strange was that this person's face was wretched, which was very incompatible with his cold and gloomy aura. One had to know that they were currently in a dungeon. It was obvious that a fellow who could suddenly appear in a dungeon had to be a boss. Thinking of this, everyone instinctively cast a detection spell on him. Undead Great Spellcaster Tyren LV80, Dark Gold Boss, Epic HP, 8000000 MP, 8000000 Skill, Mastery of all Dark Element Spells. Talent, Undying Body. Background. Introduction. Tyren was once a great spellcaster of the Church who researched dark element magic. Due to his obsession with the power of dark element magic, as well as his desire for eternal life, Tyren sacrificed his soul to the devil and became an immortal being. As such, he was hunted by the Light Church. In order to protect himself and take revenge, Tyren joined the Church of Darkness decisively and became the only human in the Council of Elders of the Dark Church. He was also the teacher of the evil dragon Dominic. He was extremely powerful, but was later imprisoned here by the evil dragon Dominic. An epic boss. After looking through Tyrone's information, the insightful heavenly secrets and the unpredictable heavenly secrets were shocked. Even Wang Yu, who was beside them, could not help but frown. Even though none of them were warlocks, they had played the game for a long time and knew the most basic background information. Warlock was a very special profession in Rebirth. In the game's background, warlocks were a group of dark element magic researchers that the Light Church had specially nurtured to deal with the Church of Darkness. Even though the spells these people used were not very honorable, they believed in the light deep down. Dark magic was divided into curses, poisons, and summoning. However, summoning was the quintessence of dark magic, yet only a few people could master it. The main reason for this was that apart from the high requirement of the practitioner's power, one had to give up their faith in the light in order to master this magic. This Tyren was a dark great wizard who was proficient in both curses and poisons. He had fallen from grace in order to forcefully cultivate the summoning element. Hence, after Tyren's death, the Church had ordered the destruction of all dark summoning spellbooks. This resulted in the loss of the warlock profession's most powerful summoning spell. As for the voodoo professions in the dark faction, they would be able to learn summoning techniques after their second awakening at level 80. Because of this, in the light faction, the incomplete warlock class was even more unpopular than the Grandmaster of Combat. It could be said that it was the class with the least number of players in the game. Even so, the warlock's crowd control skills and debuff skills were the most annoying in the game. Be it in PvE or PvP, a good crowd control warlock could basically decide the outcome of the game. As a necromancer, Tyren was the ancestor of all warlock players. Before he fell, he was already proficient in both poisons and curses. Now, Tyren was proficient in all dark magic. As his name suggested, he had also mastered the summoning element. One could only imagine how terrifying he was. Of course, this was only for the average player. The main reason why Wang Yu couldn't help but frown was because of Tyren's immortal body. Immortal body. This might be unfamiliar to others, but Wang Yu couldn't be more familiar with it. Back then, a small bug had tormented the people of Chuanjin because of this attribute. If it wasn't for the fact that they had found a special environment to destroy it, everyone would probably have died from exhaustion. Tyren was a level 80 dark gold epic boss, the pinnacle quest for all professionals in the game. Not only was he powerful and had high AI, but he also had the characteristic of an epic boss that grew with battle. Now that he had an immortal body, there was no way to defeat him. Ha ha ha! At that time, Tyren also noticed Wang Yu and the others. He grabbed Hitaki and shouted, "Little girl, you're right. Since you're here, there's no need for you to leave. Stay here and be my slaves. As for you," Tyren glanced at Hitaki and laughed again. "You're so pretty. It'd be a waste to kill you. How about you become my wife?" Pretty? Everyone was dumbfounded by Tyren's words. It was true that Hitaki was a woman, but she was a genuine beast man. She had a green face, sharp fangs, and a round waist. It would be more accurate to say that she was rough. As for being pretty, that was definitely not the case. Only the heavens knew how long Tyren had been locked up in this place. How could he say something that went against his conscience? Putting aside Wang Yu and the others, even Chimu himself would not believe it if he were to hear it. Of course, Hataki knew that it was a lie, but she was still very touched. She turned to Tyren with shining eyes and asked, Are you telling the truth? Of course, Tyren said confidently. I'm different from you guys. I won't lie. Upon hearing Tyrone's words, Hataki Might Kai was so moved that he almost burst into tears. He clenched his fists and was so emotional that he couldn't speak. As an NPC with high AI, Tyrone would be destroyed by the system if he lied. Therefore, he was definitely speaking from the bottom of his heart. TSK, Wang Yu and the others clicked their tongues in amazement. At the same time, they felt goosebumps all over their bodies. Holy crap, this Tyren's original name should be Teddy, right? They had long heard that necromancers were a bunch of psychopaths, but they didn't really believe it. Now that they saw Tyren, they realized that the rumors weren't just rumors. If that's the case. Wang Yu thought for a moment, then looked at Tyren and asked, We'll give this lady to you, and you'll let us pass this stage. How about that? Wang Yu lived up to his reputation as a member of Chuanjin. There were only things that others wouldn't dare to think of, but there was nothing that he didn't dare to do. Even under such circumstances, this brat was still involved in the business of kidnapping and selling women. A normal person's worldview wouldn't be able to accept something like this. Even though Seer and Unfathomable didn't have a good impression of Hataki, they couldn't help but get angry when they heard what Wang Yu said. They couldn't help but yell at Wang Yu, F***ck. What are you talking about? Hataki didn't say anything, but her eyes were filled with displeasure. Holy crap, everyone thought that Wang Yu was a good person. They didn't expect him to betray his teammates at such a crucial time. He really did betray his teammates. Chapter 1154. It had to be said that the saying, "One is marked by the company one keeps," was very reasonable. Wang Yu had been such a naive child back then. After spending so much time with Wuji, his thoughts had been led astray. Just like Wuji, he habitually materialized everything around him. That was true. Hataki's level was low, her equipment was poor, and her mechanical skills were even worse. If she had some skill, she wouldn't have been defeated so easily. From the battle just now, it was clear that this girl was the damage output type. She couldn't even run away properly in battle. Moreover, the party already had the archer Unpredictable, so Hataki's existence wasn't very strong. On the other hand, Tyrone was an epic boss. Not only was his strength unfathomable, he also had the undying talent, which was the most troublesome to deal with since Wang Yu started playing the game. Using Hataki's 50% to trade for such a boss was definitely worth it. Of course, habitually materializing everything around him wasn't a good habit. Moreover, Tyrone was an epic boss with extremely high AI. Naturally, he wouldn't be easily fooled. Hee. Tyrone laughed coldly when he heard Wang Yu's words. Young man, you need strength to negotiate. I'll accept this girl, and you'll become Lord Tyrone's servants. How about it? Do you feel honored? Hurry up and cut off your own head. Don't wait for me to do it myself. Alright, this Tyrone doesn't have a good sense of aesthetics, but his words are very arrogant. It wasn't hard to see that this grandson's personality was twisted. Moreover, he was an extreme believer in the rule of strength. Running away was definitely not the way to deal with such a person. Right now, the only thing he could do was to strike first. Look over there. Just at this moment, Wang Yu suddenly pointed behind Tyrone and yelled out loudly. Tyrone subconsciously turned around when he heard this. At that moment, Wang Yu stomped on the ground and charged in front of Tyrone. He used Tiger Strike to drag Hitaki's 50% chance in front of him. At the same time, Wang Yu pulled back his arms and used a knee strike. Then, with a twist of his feet, Hitaki's 50% chance was thrown behind him. The moment Wang Yu charged out, Unpredictable also aimed several throwing knives at Tyrone. Seeing that Wang Yu had saved Hitaki's 50% chance, Unpredictable waved his hand and threw the throwing knives at Tyrone. At the same time, Tyrone turned around. Seeing that Wang Yu had snatched Hitaki's 50% chance, Unpredictable flew into a rage. He reached into his wide cloak and pulled out a staff. The staff was made of some unknown bone. Its entire body shone with a golden light, and there was a skull at the top. The skull's eye sockets and nose bridge were inlaid with 3 huge red, green, and blue gems. They shone with a terrifying light. Tyrone tapped the staff lightly, and the blue gems emitted a ray of light that deflected Unpredictable's throwing knives. Then, a row of white bone spears appeared out of thin air and stabbed at Wang Yu's back. As everyone knew, Wang Yu's senses were quite sharp. The moment Tyrone's staff was pulled out, Wang Yu felt the murderous intent. In the blink of an eye, Wang Yu turned around and crouched on the ground. He raised his left arm diagonally and switched his weapon to a shield. Clang, 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 clang. The bone spears fell like rain, hitting Wang Yu's shield with ear-piercing sounds. After a wave of bone spears, Wang Yu's shield had hit rock bottom. F***ck. After putting away his shield, Wang Yu sucked in a breath of cold air and cursed. Although Wang Yu's shield wasn't big, it was still a divine weapon. Its defense far surpassed that of a shield warrior's sturdy and cumbersome tower shield. Back when Wang Yu was surrounded by nearly 1,000 people, it had easily withstood their attacks. However, Tyrone's attack had nearly destroyed the shield's block value. Fortunately, the shield in Wang Yu's hand was a divine weapon. Otherwise, with Tyrone's damage output, the shield would have been destroyed and Wang Yu would have died. That shield of yours? Tyrone was very surprised to see that Wang Yu hadn't died. He fixed his gaze on the shield in Wang Yu's hand. When he saw Wang Yu's shield clearly, a trace of shock appeared on his face. After recovering from his shock, Tyrone raised his staff again. The skull on the staff flashed with a green light, and a cloud of green poison mist began to condense. Wang Yu rolled on the ground until he reached Tyrone's feet. He pressed his hands against the ground and kicked Tyrone in the face with Thunder Stomp. Thunder Stomp was Wang Yu's most commonly used control skill, and its priority was very high. Although Tyrone was an epic boss that was more than 20 levels higher than Wang Yu, he was still a humanoid monster and a weak mage class. Therefore, his resistance to control skills wasn't very high. Wang Yu kicked out with both feet using all his strength. Bang! 44125 with a muffled sound, a damage number appeared above Tyrone's head. At the same time, he was kicked backwards. Pooh! As Tyrone's skill was interrupted, the poison mist on his staff dissipated. Taking advantage of his opponent's weakness had always been Wang Yu's style. Seeing that Tyrone had been controlled, Wang Yu followed closely behind. He jumped directly above Tyrone, crossed his legs, and consecutively stomped on Tyrone's pale face. Minus 22,145, minus 33,411, minus 55,124, minus 100. A string of damage values floated above Tyrone's head. Tyrone had already lost his balance. With a few more kicks from Wang Yu, he lost his balance and fell to the ground with a thud. Seeing this, Wang Yu bent his knee and aimed at Tyrone's neck. He launched a knee rush from above, smashing his knee into Tyrone's neck. 61112-inch tyrannical fist dance. As a huge damage value floated up, Wang Yu's fists shone with a dazzling light. With a roar, he slammed his fists into Tyrone's face. 81124-102214 combo damage in Rebirth was a terrifying damage output. As a grandmaster of combat who relied on combo attacks to make a living, Wang Yu's combo was more practical than any of the techniques on the forum. The damage was even more terrifying. Tyrone's 8 million HP was reduced by a tenth by Wang Yu's combo. 1/10 of that was 800,000. In such a short period of time, not to mention a weak Grandmaster of Combat, even a fully equipped mage would not be able to deal half of the damage that Wang Yu had dealt. Quick attacks, agile movements, and short skill cooldowns. These were the advantages of a Grandmaster of Combat. Wang Yu skillfully used these three advantages to display the most terrifying side of a Grandmaster of Combat. Seeing this, Oracle's jaw dropped to the ground. Oracle had even forgotten to deal damage. Hataki, on the other hand, was completely immersed in Wang Yu's cool and handsome combo. His eyes were sparkling like stars, and he had turned into an infatuated fool. At that moment, the three of them only had one thought in their minds. Damn, is this really a Grandmaster of Combat? Why is he different from the Grandmasters I know? Chapter 1155. Kacha. Kacha. As the white light shone, the sound of bones dislocating could be heard. Tyron's body was instantly covered in a layer of white bone armor. Not only that, but after the bone armor covered his entire body, it actually wrapped around Wang Yu's body. Wang Yu frowned and hurriedly retracted his hand. He pushed at Tyron's chest with both hands and used the recoil to flip backwards, landing firmly not far from Tyron. Without Wang Yu's suppression, Tyron straightened his body and stood up like a zombie. Without waiting for Wang Yu to step forward again, the staff in Tyron's hand once again shone with a blue light. He drew a line on the ground from left to right. Immediately, a long bone wall rose from the ground, separating Tyron and Wang Yu. After pulling out the bone wall, Tyron clenched his left hand, and a bone spear appeared in his hand. He threw it at Wang Yu, who was on the other side of the wall. Although the bone wall was extremely sturdy, it seemed to have a mind of its own. Tyron's bone spear pierced through the bone wall as if it was passing through water, shooting towards Wang Yu. Wang Yu tilted his head slightly, dodging the bone spear. The bone spear did not slow down at all, and directly pierced into Divine Insight's head, who was behind Wang Yu. Following the sound of a sharp blade entering a body, Divine Insight did not even get a chance to make a sound before his head exploded. He turned into light and disappeared. Poor Divine Insight, he was once again caught by a boss. It could not be helped. Assassins were very strong in PvP, and their efficiency in clearing small monsters was not low. However, they were in an awkward situation when they encountered a boss. This was because most bosses had relatively high perception settings. If an assassin's stealth was not high enough, they would be easily detected. Without stealth, an assassin could not even be compared to a Grandmaster of Combat. Naturally, they would be the first target of a high-level boss. It was reasonable that he had been targeted twice. Divine Insight was also aware of this. After all, assassins are always the ones who get hurt in dungeons, was a truth that the players of Rebirth had long since concluded. However, no one had expected that Divine Insight would still be able to stab him to death even though he had consciously hidden far away. This showed just how terrifying Tyrone's attack range was. When Unpredictable and Hataki saw this, they subconsciously retreated a dozen or so meters, while Tyrone's bone spears continued to fly toward them from the other side of the wall. Wang Yu was able to move about freely even amidst the tens of thousands of arrows, so he naturally did not place Tyrone's bone spears in his eyes. Wang Yu stepped to the side and turned around, as if he was taking a leisurely stroll. No matter how Tyrone's bone spears flew, they were unable to harm Wang Yu in the slightest. Not long after, Wang Yu's body was filled with bone spears. Tyron, who was on the other side of the bone wall, saw that all of his attacks had missed, and his complexion turned even paler. The soul fire in his eye sockets trembled, and the blue light on his staff was pushed to its limits. At the same time, he clenched his withered left hand. Clatter, clatter! The sound of bones colliding rang in Wang Yu's ears. Not good. Hearing this sound, Wang Yu frowned. Just as he was about to jump back, the countless bone spears on the ground rapidly gathered and flew towards Wang Yu. Before Wang Yu could dodge, the countless bone spears merged into a gigantic cage, trapping Wang Yu within. 10,000 Bones Prison. This was one of the Warlock class's ultimate control skills. It was a control skill that could imprison any target within the range of the bone prison. Naturally, Wang Yu was not one to sit around and wait for death. After realizing that he had fallen into a trap, Wang Yu punched and kicked the bone cage repeatedly. Pung, 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 as Wang Yu's powerful punches and kicks shook the cage one after another. However, Wang Yu had clearly underestimated the 10,000 Bones prison's sturdiness. This thing could even trap a boss in the hands of a player. Now that a boss like Tyren was using it, how could a player escape so easily? As such, no matter how much Wang Yu attacked, the cage remained firm. Wang Yu's attacks could only create a Tai Gu De Rin sound effect. Ha ha! Seeing that Wang Yu had become a struggling bird in the cage, Tyren laughed and removed the bone wall. He walked up to the cage and smiled at Wang Yu. Kid, you're strong, but you're brainless. How can an ant like you break my cage? Is that so? Seeing Tyren remove the bone wall and walk up to him, a strange smile appeared on Wang Yu's face. Seeing this, Tyrone was startled. Suddenly, Wang Yu, who was in the cage, turned into a streak of white light and disappeared. When she reappeared, she was already in front of him. You didn't expect this, did you? I used blink and smashed the cage to lure you here. Wang Yu chuckled. With a flip of his hand, he switched his weapon to a longsword. He took a step forward and stabbed Tyren in the chest. The longsword pierced through the gap in Tyren's bone armor and stabbed into his body. It felt like stabbing a lump of dead meat. 33321 damage value floated up. Tyren's body swayed as he swung his staff at Wang Yu's head. Wang Yu lowered his head and sidestepped Tyren's attack. He turned around and stabbed Tyren in the ribs with his longsword. 21145 Another damage value floated up. Tyren was pushed back a step by Wang Yu's powerful force. He gripped the tip of his staff with both hands and turned around to stab the back of Wang Yu's head. Tyren was only a mage, and a despicable necromancer at that. He was more suited for sneak attacks from the shadows. As for close combat, it wasn't that Wang Yu was bragging. It wasn't as if Wang Yu had never seen the top bosses in the game. Disregarding the difference in stats, even the Holy Dragon Kingdales was nothing in Wang Yu's eyes. A mere necromancer dared to show off in front of an expert? Wang Yu didn't even turn his head to look at Tyren's attack. With his right foot as the axis, he twisted his body and moved from Tyren's right to Tyren's left. Tyren's staff smashed into thin air. His head and arms were moving to the right, leaving a large opening on the left side of his neck. Wang Yu gripped the hilt of his sword with both hands and used all his strength to stab Tyren's neck. 111245 A critical hit. As the damage value floated up, the health bar above Tyren's head visibly trembled. Tyren was also pushed back a few steps. He raised his staff and was about to cast a spell. Wang Yu took 2 steps forward and followed closely behind. He slashed his sword at Tyren's wrist, forcefully interrupting Tyren's casting. The two began another round of melee combat. More accurately, Tyren was once again violently stabbed by Wang Yu. Wang Yu had seen Tyren's strength clearly. Against an epic boss like this, the slightest bit of carelessness could result in death. So since they couldn't come to an agreement, they had to kill Tyren when he was at his weakest before his combat strength had fully matured. The best way was naturally to attack the enemy's weaknesses with one's strengths. Pulling a ranged boss into melee combat was definitely a good idea. Chapter 1156. Wang Yu used his movement technique and circled around Tyrone, thrusting his longsword at the same time. Wang Yu's sword pierced through the gaps in the bone armor, stabbing into Tyrone's body again and again, causing him to howl in pain. Seeing this, Hataki Wu Wu Kai and Heavenly Secret hurriedly raised their crossbows and fired at Tyrone. It was common knowledge that chainmail armor could not withstand arrows mainly because of the gaps in its structure. Bone armor was even more so. Although it was extraordinarily sturdy, it could only defend against punches, kicks, and heavy weapons. Such gaps could not even block Wang Yu's sword, let alone an archer's arrows. With Wang Yu around, the two did not have to worry about Tyrone's skills. With the three of them working together, Tyrone's HP fell rapidly. With Wang Yu's high attack power and the two of them standing still, the damage they dealt was astonishing. In less than 10 minutes, Tyrone's HP had fallen to 30%. It was rare that Tyrone did not go berserk when his HP fell to 30%. With a spurt of energy, the three of them emptied Tyrone's HP. Tyrone screamed in pain as he lay on the ground. He died so easily? Seeing that Tyren had died, Heavenly Secret's Unfathomable and Mystique were both rather surprised. Tyren was a level 80 epic boss. No matter how one looked at it, he was a legendary figure. He was an all-purpose dark mage, yet Shi Feng had only used a few of his skills. Wasn't it a little too childish for him to die like this? Wang Yu glanced at Tyrone's corpse and frowned. It's not that simple. Didn't you see this guy's talent? Talent? Unpredictable and Unpredictable were trying to recall what kind of talent Tyrone had when Tyrone suddenly resurrected and stood up, full of HP. I knew it. Seeing Tyrone resurrect, Wang Yu's eyes narrowed and he raised his fist. However, the resurrected Tyrone seemed to know that Wang Yu would do this. After getting up, he floated backward and dodged Wang Yu's attack. After flying out of Wang Yu's attack range, Tyrone looked at the three of them and laughed disdainfully. Ha 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 ha. A bunch of ignorant ants. Do you really think I'll be killed so easily? Come, this old man will show you some colors. As he spoke, the staff in Tyrone's hand flashed with a dazzling green light. Whoosh! After a soft sound, a circle of green poisonous fog spread out from Tyrone's body in 360 degrees. It's poison nova. Lie down. Everyone was familiar with toxic nova. Just a moment ago, Buzzrook had already used it once. Everyone knew that this skill was a full-on attack, so they needed to find a place to hide. In this castle, there was no place to hide. If they wanted to hide, they could only lie on the ground or jump into the air like Wang Yu. The deadly poison brushed past the backs of the two men. Just as the two heaved a sigh of relief and were about to get up, Tyren pointed his staff at the ground and softly chanted, "Undead Curse." At the same time, Tianji and Tianji's bodies sank as a powerful force pulled them to the ground. It was as if they were rooted to the ground. No matter how hard they struggled, they were unable to move. Puff! Turin snapped his fingers, and the color of the staff in his hand suddenly turned red. Skeleton warriors wielding long swords emerged from the ground beside him. The bones of these skeletal warriors were black and shiny, and the weapons in their hands shone brightly. It was obvious that they had been enhanced by dark magic. Compared to the trash undead summoned by Buzzrook, these skeletal warriors were much stronger. Seeing that Unpredictable Fate was about to die under his sword, Wang Yu leaped into the air and flew above Unpredictable Fate. He swung his staff in a circle and sent the skeleton warriors flying. Then, he reached out to pull Unpredictable Fate up. Humans are so childish. Turin chuckled, his staff turning green as he chanted, "Decaying poison." Following that, a gentle green light radiated from the ground beneath Unpredictable's body, instantly turning him into a shade of green. At that time, Wang Yu also grabbed Unpredictable Tianji's hand. The green followed Unpredictable Tianji's hand and spread towards Wang Yu's body. Decaying poison? Wang Yu jumped in fright. He hurriedly let go of Unpredictable Fate and leaped to the side. With a warlock like Chun Xiang as a friend, Wang Yu had a good understanding of dark magic. Decaying poison was a rare skill of warlocks. It could spread the poison to any living creature the target came into contact with. The more players infected by the poison, the faster they would lose health. It could be said to be an extremely tyrannical AoE poison skill. Who would have thought that Turin would be so cunning? He even knew how to exploit the weakness of players' emotions to attack his target. Of course, the lives of players in the game weren't that important. Seeing that the two of them had been poisoned by Turin, Wang Yu immediately leaped towards Turin. Seeing Wang Yu flying over, Turin used the same trick. His staff turned blue and was about to summon Bone Wall. Wang Yu reached behind his back with his left hand and pulled out a red musket. He aimed at Turin and pulled the trigger. Bang! Following the sound of a gunshot, a repelling bullet blasted into Turin's head. The powerful attack forced Turin 2 steps back, his head tilting back. At the same time, Wang Yu had already flown above Turin. Learning from mistakes was the virtue of an epic boss. Having been beaten to death by Wang Yu once, Turin naturally knew how powerful Wang Yu's close combat abilities were. Seeing Wang Yu fly over, Turin hurriedly raised his staff to block. Wang Yu stepped on Turin's staff and jumped behind him. He landed with eagle stamp and pressed his knees together. His left hand grabbed Turin's chin from behind and pulled him down by the chin. The back of Turin's head rested on Wang Yu's knees. Wang Yu frowned, his expression solemn. He grabbed Turin with his left hand and exerted 120% of his strength with his right, throwing punch after punch at Turin's face. Bang! 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 The rhythmic sound of fists hitting flesh rang out. 25144-34415-51454. A chain of damage numbers appeared above Turin's head. Tyren was a weak magic-based boss, so his resistance to crowd control skills wasn't very high. Wang Yu's left hand was grabbing at Tyren while her right fist was punching at Tyren, causing him to lose his footing. As the combo damage increased, the speed at which Turin's health dropped became more and more obvious. Bang bang bang! Wang Yu's fists maintained a steady rhythm. The empty castle was filled with the terrifying sounds of attacks. Finally, under the bombardment of Wang Yu's iron fists, Turin's health bar emptied. With another scream, he died at Wang Yu's hands. Chapter 1157. Ga. After reviving, Tyren let out a strange cry and floated into the air. He smirked at Wang Yu and the others. You ants? You want to hurt me? Wang Yu and the others were completely speechless when they saw Tyren resurrect and act so arrogantly. Meow, the immortal body is really disgusting. He can still resurrect after dying like that. Can the system be any more shameless? Huh? Why did this guy look a little different from before? He's full HP? Just as everyone was feeling helpless against Tyren, a voice suddenly came from behind. Everyone turned around and saw God's Secret running back from the resurrection point. He was looking at Tyren in surprise. He's activated? Hearing God's Secret's words, everyone couldn't help but be stunned. Then, they looked at Tyren and realized that something was wrong. In the game, a boss aura was related to its special effects. For example, when a boss used aura, the aura's special effects were obviously different from normal. So, if a boss strength had increased or changed, experienced players could basically see it with their naked eyes. It was obvious that Tyren's aura and special effects were much stronger than when they first saw him. However, because he didn't activate aura after being killed twice in a row, they didn't notice it. God's Secret had died before Tyren was killed the first time. Since he ran back, Tyren had already died twice. So, when he saw Tyren again, he could see the change at a glance. This was basically the same as looking at one's own child and not feeling that they were growing, but others always felt that their child was growing fast. If the boss aura had increased, its attributes would definitely have increased as well. Tyrone was currently at full health, so there was no way he would explode when he was at critical health. It was truly strange for him to be like this, so everyone instinctively cast Detect on him again. However, after using Detect on Tyren, God's Secret said in surprise, I can't see Tyren's attributes. You can't see his attributes? Hearing God's words, Wang Yu's expression froze. When players reached level 50, their detection skills would also awaken. The detection range of their targets would also increase from level 20 to level 30. At this moment, Wang Yu was in the same party as Unpredictable. He knew that Unpredictable was level 52. If even he couldn't see the boss's stats, didn't that mean that the boss's level had risen to above level 82? Thinking of this, Wang Yu hurriedly cast a detection spell. Sure enough, Tyrone's level had risen to 83. At the same time, there was an additional buff at the bottom of Tyrone's attributes. More healthy after death. Necromancer Tyren has an immortal body. Every time he revives, his level will increase according to the number of times he has died, up to a maximum of level 200. Lasts for 3,000 seconds. If he dies again during this period, he will be refreshed. Wang Yu was speechless when he saw Tyren's current state. He then sent a screenshot to the party channel. F***CK. Destiny's Unpredictable and the others cried out when they saw the screenshot. What do you mean by shameless? This is called. They had been playing the game for some time now, but this was the first time they had seen such a ridiculous stat. Every time a boss died, it would level up according to the number of times it died. In other words, every time it died, it would gain 1 level. If it died a second time, it would gain 2 levels. If everyone managed to kill Tyrone again, it would gain 3 levels and reach level 86. If this bastard kept dying, it wasn't impossible for him to become a level 200 final boss. It was obvious that he didn't want players to attack him. With such a powerful boss, it was impossible to pass through without attacking him. Attacking him was useless. The more you attacked him, the more powerful he would become. How the F***CK were you supposed to play the game? Even Wang Yu wanted to give up after seeing Tyrone's stats, let alone Destiny, who didn't want to fight in the first place. The parasite's undying body was already a headache. This guy's undying body was clearly much stronger than the parasite's. What do we do? Are we going to fight or not? At this moment, everyone's eyes fell on Wang Yu. In the game, the words of experts were always the truth. As everyone's backbone, Wang Yu naturally had to bear the responsibility of making a decision. Wang Yu was also in a difficult position. If he retreated now, it would be a pity to give up halfway. Moreover, this wasn't Wang Yu's personality. But if he forced the boss, everyone had seen its stats. It was clearly a waste of time and asking for trouble. After some thought, Wang Yu gritted his teeth and said, "We have to fight, but we have to find the right way. Otherwise, it'll be a waste of time." "Then what's the right way?" the three asked in unison. Wang Yu shook his head helplessly. "I don't know either." F***CK. Are you guys done talking? Just as they were discussing how to deal with Tyren, who was in midair, saw that the 4 of them were ignoring him. He immediately became impatient and shouted at everyone, "What do you think? Have you thought it through? Do you want to be this old man's slave? This old man can give you eternal life and unparalleled strength." Tui, seeing Heaven's Secrets had suffered a loss, he was clearly very sensitive to the word slave. When he heard Tyren's words, he immediately said angrily, "If you have any skills, just use them." "Ah!" Tyren shouted. "Since that's the case, this old man will show you what I'm capable of." As he spoke, Tyren's staff flashed with a dazzling red light. At the same time, Tyren raised his staff and pointed it in the air. Then, a huge circular summoning circle appeared under Tyren's feet. "Come out, my child." Following Tyren's furious roar, a gigantic skeletal dragon head emerged from the summoning magic circle in midair, followed by gigantic bone claws and broad bone wings. In an instant, a bone dragon emerged from the summoning magic circle in midair and landed on the ground. When the bone dragon landed, the surroundings trembled slightly. Immediately afterward, the bone dragon spread its wings and opened its mouth at Wang Yu and the others. Although Wang Yu couldn't hear anything, he could sense that the bone dragon was roaring. As for Heaven's Secrets and the others, they were in a much more miserable state. Dragon-type creatures were innately intimidating to other races. With Dales's Dragon Emperor bloodline, Wang Yu naturally didn't fear the bone dragon. As for the others, they couldn't even lift their heads due to the bone dragon's immense pressure, their basic attributes plummeting by 20%. Wang Yu couldn't tell how high the bone dragon's rank was. However, judging from the others' attribute reductions, it was at least level 100. Chapter 1158. At Tyrone's command, the skeletal dragon lowered its head, opened its mouth, and charged at Wang Yu and the others. The skeletal dragon was huge. Although it looked clumsy, its strides were long, and it ran at an incredible speed. Clang clang clang, with a distance of tens of meters between them, it only took a few steps to reach Wang Yu and the others. "Run to the back!" Wang Yu roared at the sight and gave the order to Divine Insight and the others. When the three heard Wang Yu's roar, they shivered and turned to run. Trying to run? Tyren, who was hovering in the air, sneered when he heard that. He waved his staff, and a bone wall rose up to block the castle's entrance, blocking Heaven's Secrets trio. At the same time, the bone dragon had already caught up to the trio. Seeing that the three were about to be rammed to death by the skeletal dragon, Wang Yu's figure flashed and jumped between the three and the skeletal dragon. "Stop right there!" Wang Yu roared and activated his internal breath and dragon-subduing palm. Immediately, a golden light burst out from Wang Yu's body. He raised his hands, and huge waves turned into dragon shadows and collided with the skeletal dragon. True esoteric dragon-subduing shocker. A row of golden words lit up on top of Wang Yu's head. With the support of dragon-subduing palm, toppling the mountains and overturning the seas would be strengthened into shocker. Now, with another layer of internal breath, shocker was strengthened once again. Dragon-subduing palm was originally a palm technique that countered dragons. Now that it was strengthened by internal breath, the power of this palm suddenly multiplied. As the most powerful move in dragon-subduing palm, this strengthened version of shocker could already allow Wang Yu to fight against any dragon boss. Even Dragon Emperor Dales would have to think twice before facing it, let alone a small skeletal dragon without any AI. Boom! Accompanied by a deafening sound, the huge skeletal dragon was directly sent flying by Wang Yu's palm. Walala! After being hit by Wang Yu's palm, the bone dragon's HP dropped by 1/5, and half of its head was sent flying by Wang Yu's palm. The bone dragon's body let out a strange sound, as if it had been heavily injured. The dragon-subduing palm lived up to its name. In terms of dealing with dragon-type monsters, there was absolutely no other skill that could beat it. Is this the legendary Super Scion? Seeing Wang Yu's current state, the Seer of Heaven's Secrets and the others couldn't help but freeze on the spot, as if they'd forgotten their own situation. Tyren, who was in midair, could not help but reveal a shocked expression when he saw the power of Wang Yu's palm strike. He cried out involuntarily, "Dragon! Dragon-subduing palm!" As the saying goes, take advantage of his weakness and kill him. Tyren had an immortal body, but this bone dragon didn't. Wang Yu didn't pay attention to the surprised Tyren. With a backhand palm strike, he blasted a hole in the bone wall, allowing the other three to run out. Then, he leaped and landed on top of the bone dragon. The bone dragon was stunned by Wang Yu's astounding. As soon as it recovered, it shook its head, wanting to seek revenge on Wang Yu. However, Wang Yu kicked down from the sky, using the thunder stomp version of Dragon Tail Whip. The pitiful bone dragon had just gotten up when Wang Yu stepped on its head, smashing it into the ground. Wang Yu landed on the ground and turned around, activating Wrath of Gale and Thunderbolt. His strength attribute soared, and his hands grabbed the bone dragon's upper and lower jaw. With a twist, the huge bone dragon was forcibly flipped upside down by Wang Yu. The bone dragon was just a skeleton, and its movements were much more clumsy than a real dragon's. After such a large body was flipped over, it completely lost the ability to move. Wang Yu formed a claw with his palm and grabbed the bone dragon's neck, pinching his 5 fingers together. Crack! A section of the bone dragon's neck bone was pulled out by Wang Yu. Wang Yu had studied the tendon dislocation bone hand since he was young. It was an expert in breaking bones. Even if it was a living dragon, Wang Yu would be able to break its joints, let alone a skeleton. The bone dragon's ribs had definitely met its nemesis when it encountered Wang Yu. Crack! Crack! Wang Yu's figure constantly moved around the bone dragon's body. At the same time, he crisscrossed his hands, grabbing at the bone dragon's vital joints. With the sound of joints falling off, Wang Yu quickly threw over a dozen bones to the ground. Tyrone, who was in midair, saw his beloved bone dragon being pressed to the ground. Rage rose in his heart and he shouted, "Trash! Get up!" The soul fire in the bone dragon's eyes flashed, and it began to struggle. Wang Yu smiled, threw away the bones in his hand, and struck the bone dragon's body with his palm. Crash! The enormous dragon was struck by Wang Yu's palm, and it instantly turned into a pile of white bones. Seeing the bone dragon being torn apart by Wang Yu, Tyrone almost fell from the sky. He shouted angrily, "Ridiculous worm, do you think you can kill my eternal servant like this?" As he spoke, Tyrone spat a mouthful of old blood on the staff in his hand. When the staff came into contact with Tyrone's blood, it shone brightly and enveloped the bone dragon. At the same time, the bones that Wang Yu had torn apart were quickly pieced back together. In just a few seconds, a brand new bone dragon reappeared in front of Wang Yu. Damn! This is too shameless. Seeing this scene, Wang Yu was completely speechless. This system was really unreasonable when it became shameless. He had gone to great lengths to tear apart the bone dragon, but in the time it took for the bone dragon to spit blood, it had already pieced it back together. Clearly, competing with Tyrone to see who could tear apart the bone dragon faster was a very unwise move. In addition, Wang Yu's dragon-subduing palm and Wrath of Gale and Lightning had already disappeared. Whether he could forcefully tear apart the bone dragon again was still a question. Thus, without another word, Wang Yu activated his qigong and jumped to the door. He flew out of the castle, arrived at the suspension bridge, and rejoined the team. Tyrone and the bone dragon chased all the way to the castle gate. Seeing the 4 of them on the bridge and running to the other side, Tyrone was shocked. He patted the bone dragon's head and recalled it, then turned around and returned to the castle. When Wang Yu and the others saw that Tyrone had stopped chasing after them, question marks appeared in their heads. They were all puzzled. Why isn't this bastard chasing us anymore? After all, the aggro of dungeon monsters wouldn't stop until one of them was dead. It was just a bridge away, but Tyrone had already turned around and returned to the castle. Was this guy too lazy to even walk a few dozen meters? At this moment Hataki guessed, could it be that he can't leave the castle? Can't leave the castle? That makes sense. Hearing Hataki's guess, everyone expressed their agreement. From the background story, Tyrone had imprisoned Tyrone. Thinking about how this old thing was so lonely that he couldn't find anyone to accompany him, and even treated Hataki as a beauty, this was completely in line with the various attributes of his old house. But this castle doesn't have any barriers or restrictions. We can all come and go as we please, so why is he imprisoned? Hataki asked again. About that, hearing this, everyone hurriedly looked around the castle. The scenery around the castle was very simple. Apart from a terrifying moat, there was nothing that could block their way in and out. Right. A moat! You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.